Change, rain and drizzle over western hills and coasts, many other areas staying dry. It will be a warm night though, temperatures holding up in the mid to high teens in most towns and cities, and that is going to lead into a pretty humid feeling weekend. A cloudy start, murky start, but it should get brighter. Certainly a brighter day to come tomorrow across much of northern Scotland. Northern Ireland cheering up along with central Scotland. Staying fairly cloudy over the far north of England. Rain and drizzle on and off across Cumbria and northwest Wales. But further south, as the sun pops out, the temperature's really jumping up over 30 degrees Celsius and getting hotter for Sunday. Bye for now.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and a happy Friday. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. Breaking news, the Hainault sword attack. Marcus Monzo has been sentenced for at least 40 years for murder after killing a schoolboy in North East London. We'll be hearing from the victim's family shortly at a police press conference. And as Keir Starmer caves in to 120 Labour benefit rebels, it marks the under fire PM's third U-turn in a month. After also backtracking on the winter fuel allowance cuts and being forced into a rape gang inquiry that Labour voted against, is Keir Starmer on the brink? And could we even see a dramatic early general election? Labour is planning a one-in, one-out immigration plan with France, where for every illegal immigrant we deport back to France, we must accept an asylum seeker from them in return. I'll be joined by border control experts to ask them, shouldn't it be non-in and all-out? Beep on. And a one-legged cricketer is feeling stumped after he had his disability benefit stopped for not being disabled enough. I'll be joined in the studio by Sean Rigby, who lost his leg aged 2, to see what he thinks of their decision to bowl out his benefits claim. Apologies there for the frog in my throat. We have another horrendous murder in Britain committed with a bladed weapon and with a psychopath under the influence of drugs. 40 years minimum term before parole. Some may say was a fitting sentence. Some may say it simply wasn't stern enough. And with echoes of the Valdo Callicane case, of course, one close to my heart. 2 weeks ago today, I walked with the victims' families in Nottingham. Have we learned nothing? As another child dies on the streets, his father cradling him as he slips away, unbearable loss for the family, and yet huge bravery from our police force. The whole conversation, though, that will start about weapons, about drugs, about sentencing. It feels like Groundhog Day, and shortly we'll be going to a police press conference at the Old Bailey. And we may even hear from some of the families themselves. In the meantime, please do get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. But before all of that, it's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. Just after 3 o'clock, Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed a major climb down on his welfare reforms after a rebellion by more than 100 Labour MPs threatened to sink the bill. It's a move described by Dame Meg Hillier as a win for Labour values.
The government's been really listening to Labour MPs and is going to protect people who are currently in receipt of personal independence payments so that it won't decrease. And also people who receive the health element of universal credit, that will also be protected. So, you know, in line with Labour values, it's about protecting the most vulnerable. But I would say all of us want to see people in work who can be in work and want to work. And we're very committed to this bill, which promotes movement into work. But these changes are really critical to protecting the most vulnerable.
It's the third government U-turn in a month and a major blow to Sir Keir Starmer's authority, according to opposition parties. The move slashes up to £3 billion from the bill's expected savings, casting doubt over Chancellor Rachel Reeves' economic plans. Some rebels have welcomed the concessions, but others say they'll still vote against the bill over fears of a two-tier welfare system. Well, Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall says existing claimants of disability and health benefits will now be protected, with cuts only applying to new applicants.
I really believe these are positive changes. We've worked hard to get agreement on this. There's really strong commitment to the principles of reforming our welfare state. Those who can work should get help, and we have the biggest ever investment into employment support for sick and disabled people, but also to protect those who can never work, make sure their incomes are protected and make sure they're never reassessed again.
Well, as we were hearing that breaking news from Martin at the top of the hour, that Marcus Monzo has been jailed for life with a minimum term of 38 years for murdering 14-year-old schoolboy Daniel Angerin with a sword in Hainault. The 37-year-old also injured 5 others, including 2 police officers, during a 20-minute rampage in April. Well, we are expecting to hear from the family of Daniel Angerin, giving a statement outside the court in central London later this hour. We will, of course, keep across that for you and bring you the very latest from that statement. The fact from the court is that he was found guilty of attempted murder, wounding with intent and carrying an offensive weapon. Daniel's father told the court today his son was a gifted boy with so much potential. 4 people have been arrested by counter-terror police after a break-in at RAF Brize Norton, where military planes were sprayed with red paint. Footage posted by pro-Palestinian group Palestine Action showed activists targeting an RAF Voyager jet engine using a scooter and fire extinguishers. 3 suspects, aged 24, 29 and 36, were arrested under the Terrorism Act, with a 4th woman held for assisting an offender. The government now plans to prescribe Palestine Action, making support for the group illegal. Defence Secretary John Healey has ordered a full review of UK-based security after what he described as deeply disturbing breaches. Habibur Massam has been found guilty of murdering his wife in broad daylight as she pushed their baby in a pram. The 26-year-old launched a ferocious knife attack after tracking her to a women's refuge. He then calmly walked away, leaving her bleeding to death and their 7-month-old son behind. Convicted this morning at Bradford Crown Court, Massam was described as a violent and jealous, controlling husband. He was arrested days later after a nationwide manhunt. And France has agreed to take back some Channel migrants in a new one-in, one-out deal with the UK. For every illegal migrant arriving here, 1 will be returned across the Channel. It's the first agreement of its kind aimed at stopping repeat crossings and cracking down on smuggling gangs. The Home Secretary is expected to unveil the plan next week, ahead of President Macron's state visit to London. But critics, including Shadow Paymaster General Richard Holden, says, well, it's little too late.
It's going to actually increase the number of people crossing the Channel, and it's going to be sort of weird merry-go-round in the middle of the English Channel as we have people coming on one side and then shifting them back just for others to come on the reverse again. It's completely ridiculous. What we should have is a proper deterrent, like we had with the Rwanda scheme, which said if you come here illegally, you do not get to stay in the UK.
Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Martin up next. First, though, a look at the markets.
My Claim Group sponsors the GBNews Finance Report.
So here's how the markets are shaping up this afternoon. The pound will buy you $1.373 and €1.172. The price of gold, £2,386.30 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,787 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GBNews Finance Report.
Thank you, Sam. And breaking news from the past hour. A man who murdered a 14-year-old schoolboy with a samurai sword as he walked to school in East London has been sentenced to life in prison. And while we wait for the press conference from the Old Bailey, let's cross now to GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. An horrific attack in broad daylight. Marcus Monzo, 37, will now serve 40 years, life for murder. An astonishing case of barbarity, of bravery, and of a boy dying in his father's arms, every parent's worst nightmare. As we wait for this press conference, Mark White, tell us about the case.
Well, it was, as you say there, the most horrific of murders and attempted murders, as this man, Marcus Monzo, went on what was a 20-minute rampage before he was finally arrested, as he looked for victims on this quiet housing estate in Hainault. You see him there posing with the cat that he would later kill and skin. Absolutely horrific. And of course, with the samurai sword that he then used during this rampage. You're looking at images there of those brave police officers who pushed forward trying to confront him, most armed with nothing other than some of their CS spray, and indeed also one of the officers with a taser. Now that officer, PC Yasmin Metcham Whitfield, gave a victim impact statement in court, really detailing the injuries that she suffered because she, one of the first officers to arrive on scene with a taser, pushed forward, ran after Marcus Monzo, who disappeared down a lane. And then as she headed down that lane, he appeared from behind a building and started attacking this officer, smashing that samurai sword down on top of her skull, causing not just a deep laceration on her skull, but also a compound fracture of the skull, severely injuring her arm and her hand as well. And she could have, according to the judge, died of severe blood loss. And if it wasn't for a colleague who then put himself between her and Marcus Monzo, they believe that she would have died because he would have kept on attacking her. Now, in that victim impact statement, Martin, the officer said that I find this emotionally devastating. Every morning as I try to cover the scar and dent on the left side of my head, I no longer want to travel by myself or go out of the house without someone being with me. I have a fear of being attacked again and not being able to defend myself. Well, we heard from the Inspector Malloy Campbell, who was rushing to the scene to help back up his officers, and he was listening to the police radio when the news was coming through about this officer being attacked. This is what he told the media a little earlier.
As we were heading to the incident, my sergeant was driving and I was in the operator seat, and as we heard that transmission, police officer stabbed, I think I turned to him and said, just get us there. Don't speed up, don't let red mist get to you. We need to get there and get control of this incident. And that's the only thing. You need to switch back into the basics of being a police officer on the ground, which is the preservation of life. And that's it. And so that's the only thing I was thinking of, the need to preserve life. And that includes the police officers on the ground.
Now, Martin, Inspector Campbell was himself injured as he pushed forward to confront this sword-wielding attacker, suffered very significant injuries to his hand and was actually off work for 3 months because of that, before he regained the mobility of his hand again to make him an effective frontline officer. But he said, in terms of him and his fellow colleagues, they weren't heroes that day. They were just doing what they were trained to do, which was to push forward to preserve life. Martin, they were waiting some 10 to 15 minutes before the first armed officers, firearms officers, arrived at the scene. And so they had to make that decision. Do they push forward or do they wait for these firearms officers? And this is what he told the media cameras again a little earlier.
And so, yeah, it was just a case of doing what I thought needed to be done. It was a decision. Do we contain the defendant or do we confront? And that was a decision that needed to be made quickly. And obviously the decision was to confront, because I felt that had we done anything else, then more members of the public and potentially police officers would have been seriously injured or worse.
I'm outside the Old Bailey now, outside the court, waiting for members, we believe, of the family of those caught up in this, victims, and indeed police and prosecutors coming out to give their reaction to the sentence handed down by Mr Justice Abernethy in the trial at the Old Bailey at the conclusion of this trial. I think, Martin, this without doubt will raise questions again about how protected officers, frontline officers, are when they rush, often in a time of heightened street violence, to calls where knives and swords in this instance are used, the kind of protection that they have. We heard obviously about that one officer, PC Yasmin Metcham-Whitfield, and the fact that she had a taser, but most of the other officers who arrived quickly on scene were not armed with anything other than their asp, with that sort of extended baton, and with their CS spray, which, you know, in this case made very little difference to this man who was in psychosis and in a killing frenzy. So there will be, I'm sure, calls once again by the Police Federation, certainly the Metropolitan Police Federation, for those police officers who want to be able to carry a taser stun gun, to be able to carry a taser if they so wish, because at the moment there are tasers that are given out to response officers, but you're usually only one response officer in a particular group of responding officers will have that taser. So if somehow they're separated, or it's another unit that arrives without a taser, then what on earth do you have really that's effective against someone who's wielding a samurai sword in this murderous fashion?
And there invariably will be calls for the police to be armed in a like-for-like manner. We're in a situation now where the incredible bravery of our police officers is just met by barbarity, criminals armed to the teeth, off their heads on drugs. And I wonder, Mark White, if we're about to hear from an incredible man, the father of Daniel Andrew, and the 14-year-old boy who was murdered in cold blood, Dr. Ebenezer Andrew, who's been praised throughout all of this as being a man of intense, calm, dignified, and composure that most of us would have thought impossible. Those are the words of the judge. And Mark White, I'm always, as you know, just blown away by the human impact statements of the family. As you know, I've become close friends with the victims of the Valdo Calacane case, and you know, the statements from those who've lost their loved ones are just, I think, what we all need to hear as a nation, because we don't understand the magnitude and the devastation that these cases cause until you hear the loss of those who are left behind to pick up the pieces and examine so many failures where these people aren't intercepted and stopped before they commit killings.
No, you're right, Martin, and I mean, it was, I think, heartfelt to listen to the statement from Dr. Anjurin, who really said that with regard to what happened to young Daniel, it was his older brother that came running in and told his father that Daniel had been stabbed. He said that he ran out into the street. He saw what was just someone who was lying in a heap across the road. He went over, recognised the sportswear that Daniel had been wearing when he left the house just a few minutes earlier, and then saw this pool of blood, and he realised instantly that his son was beyond help at that stage. But he did what any father would do, bend down and spoke his name, cradled him in his arms. And he said, you know, soon after, we were approached by a paramedic who informed us that Daniel's situation was critical and it was unlikely that he would survive. He said, we'll not see him again. We won't see him get married or have children. all the normal things parents hope for their children. All these hopes and aspirations have been cruelly snatched away from us through this wicked man, the actions of Marcus Monzo, who absolutely no remorse. And this was the most amazing young man, by all accounts, Martin, who had the most wonderful life potentially ahead of him. A young man that was academically brilliant, we're told. A young man that played the violin, that played the piano, that was just a joy to be round. But a young man who was slain in the most horrific manner.
Now, Mark, well, I don't think anybody listening to that, especially myself, can fail to be moved. But I think it's really, really important for us to say these kind of things on national television, because this isn't just another statistic. This isn't just another horror. This is another life that's been snubbed out, another life that's been cut short, and we have to keep talking about this. So we've just got to try and stop anything like this happening again. Mark White, thank you very much. We'll be waiting for that press conference. I sincerely hope we do hear from that beautiful father, Dr. Ebenezer Angerin. I sincerely do. We'll be back soon with more.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Kendall or Reeves, the full guy or McSweeney. Welcome back to me, Martin Daubney. Are we going to that press conference live there? No, we're not. We're moving on to some politics now. Welcome back. It is now 3:23. Are Sir Keir Starmer's days numbered? Because in the latest flip-flop, the Prime Minister says he deeply regrets saying his island of strangers comment. Now, this follows, of course, the Prime Minister once again bowing down to pressure as he announced major concessions on the welfare bill. And joining me now in the studio to discuss this is GBNews political correspondent Catherine Forster and also the former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards. Welcome to you both. Let's start with you, Catherine Forster. 3 U-turns in a month I make this. First of all, the winter fuel allowance, then the rape gangs inquiry. Remember, the Labour Party whipped against that. Now a climb down on benefits. And with the Island of Strangers comment, maybe it's 4 U-turns. Here's the big question. Does the Prime Minister have any credibility left? He seems to bow to any wind that's against his direction. He seems to be making concessions left, right and centre. And surely that sends out a message to anybody out there. All they've got to do is stand up to the PM and he'll buckle like a cheap suit.
Well, indeed, and I was in the lobby briefing with political journalists at lunchtime and somebody said, is there a problem of credibility here? Because he seems to change his mind constantly. Look, I was in The Hague just a couple of days ago where we asked the Prime Minister repeatedly about the welfare bill, if they were going to have to make concessions, and he kept saying, we've got to press on. He talked about noises off, which I think was an unfortunate phrase to use, given he has about 126 very cross Labour MPs who publicly said they wouldn't support this. The government, I think, is reasonably confident now that it will get this vote through on Tuesday. But how did it come to this in the first place? Because they've known that these welfare reforms were going to be very unpopular. They're designed to save £5 billion. Now, because of the changes that have been made in that people already getting the personal independence payment and the health element of universal credit won't be affected. The Resolution Foundation are now saying this could cost the government, this U-turn, £3.2 billion. So Rachel Reeves is going to have to find a whole lot of money from somewhere. Now, the Prime Minister in The Hague the other day said to me, I can reassure your viewers, we are not going to put up taxes on working people. In the lobby briefing, they said they're not going to put up borrowing, but this money has got to come from somewhere. And of course, they've just pledged ultimately to get to 5% on defence spending in the next 10 years. Not much money around. Very, very unclear how they're going to fund all this.
Peter Owens, let's bring you in now. There's been talk about a regime change. Morgan McSweeney, the head chief advisor, perhaps he's the guy who wrote that Island of Strangers speech. That's in the firing line. But Labour list have put out some information today about the 2 least popular cabinet ministers, and that is Rachel Reeves and Liz Kendall. Of course, the Chancellor and Liz Kendall has her fingerprints all over the welfare cuts plan. What is the Labour list, and tell us, how does it come to the conclusion of a minister's popularity or not?
Labour list, which I used to run, is a blog. It's obviously supportive of the Labour Party, but it's not funded by them. It's totally independent. It produces decent journalism, just like any left or right-leaning newspaper. Traditionally, they do monthly popularity contests, ranking Labour MPs by how much they're liked. But unusually, they also did who should have a question mark over them in the next Labour government reshuffle. And as you said, Liz Kendall and Rachel Reeves came out, do you call it top or do you call it bottom? But they call out as most likely to be reshuffled. Now, I would say to Keir Starmer, and this applies to Morgan McSweeney, who's not an MP, he's an advisor who's not elected, that all the 3 people we're talking about, Morgan McSweeney, the top advisor, the Chancellor and the Work and Pension Secretary, they were part of the team that helped Labour get elected. It's easy to show leadership in good times. It's tougher to show leadership and loyalty in bad times. It's been a bad week for Labour. I would strongly urge the Prime Minister to stick by his colleagues now, because ultimately the welfare policy on which we've just seen a partial U-turn was approved by the Prime Minister, so it would be unfair of him to dismiss any of colleagues who've rode in behind it, and I actually don't think he will. I think people say he has a lack of ideology, but I think he's got enough street smarts. He won't sack his Chancellor and he won't sack his Work and Pension Secretary, but there are going to be several more difficult weeks because of the the cliff edge, which are...
Well, you talk about cliff edge. Isn't the point here? It's not about throwing bodies under the bus, Rachel Reeves or Liz Campbell. It's the bus driver. The bus driver, the Prime Minister, is driving the bus off the cliff. His popularity is going down like a stone. In the polling, Labour can't get a break. Reform are miles ahead and the gap seems to be growing.
I'm not too bothered about that.
Why not?
Because
it should be.
When I worked for the Shadow Cabinet, Ed Miliband was leader, and we had a 10-point poll lead and then lost fairly heavily to David Cameron's Conservatives in 2015. So although it's become a bit of an adage, polls change. And remember, Reform are doing very well, but they only have one famous politician in Nigel Farage, and the rest of them fall out among themselves. Anyway, put that aside. What do Labour need now? Because it has been a bad week and it's daft stuff. No, I think it's not that. They need some good governance. They've done plenty of good things, like money for the NHS, school breakfast clubs and GB Energy, which I think are all good things. But they kind of need, whether you call it a narrative or a story, they've not always been able to articulate in just 30 seconds what the government is for. You need to knit it all together in a way that David Cameron did about austerity. I didn't like that, but he had an answer. Tony Blair had an answer. He said, we'll grow the economy and invest it in public services. They need a very quick narrative that explains what the government is here for and how it's making our lives better and making me and you and everyone else less poor.
Well, good luck with that. Peter Edwards, thank you as ever for joining us. And also thank you to you, Catherine Force. Let's move on to our next story, because Sir Keir Starmer is in talks with the French to return Channel immigrants in a one-in and one-out system. Well, let's speak now with the former director of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith. Tony, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. So, one in, one out. That basically means anybody who comes here illegally we can kick out, but we have to take an asylum seeker in return. I put it to you, this is the worst plan in history. What we want is none in and all out.
Afternoon, Martin. Yeah, I mean, I suppose I should be running around the room punching the air that we've got a result here, Martin, because I've spent a lot of my career trying to do a deal with the French on asylum returns, and ever since the boat started, I've been advocating safe thirds, but we've never got one before. And this isn't new. I mean, we've had this before where we do some kind of deal with them. It's always gone wrong, Martin. I'm afraid I'm not confident in any deal. Of course, we haven't seen the detail yet. I may be doing them a disservice, but I worry, Martin, is that we've got this big summit coming up this week. There's desperate political pressure upon them to come up with some kind of an announcement because they're getting beaten up all over the place. So we might just end up selling ourselves down the river here. There are a lot of people in France that would quite like to come here. That can't come here, right? They don't qualify to come here. They already are family reunification routes, so let's forget about that. I think we must be saying that we're going to offer them some kind of carrot where a lot of people that can't come here now are going to be allowed in. That really, really worries me because we've got quite enough people coming in as it is. As for the returns, mate, I don't even know how that's going to work. I mean, how's that going to work then? Are they going to get? Are we going to be able to put them on a Border Force vessel and sail them straight back into Calais? Well, all of them? Straight away? Or what happens when the lawyers get involved when they're in our waters? Or what happens if we bring them ashore in Dover? Are there going to be exceptions? What, women, kids? All of these things, Martin, are going around in my head. So I'm afraid I'm not running around punching the air. In fact, I've got a sense of that depression hanging over me, waiting to see what exactly it is that we've done here. But I am a little bit worried that we might be actually making things worse than better. I just hope I'm wrong.
I think you have every right to be cynical. I mean, let's face it, every illegal immigrant that makes it to our shores is already a failure of the French to stop them coming across. And we're paying £500 million a year for the merit of that. So we're paying £500 million, and when the French can't do their job, only then can we return them. But even if we do that, we've got to take an asylum seeker back. I put it to you, who's doing these deals? They shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a deal-making terrible. They're incompetent.
Yeah, I'll agree with you. I don't know, Martin, who's doing it right now. I do know the guys that used to do it back in the day, but they've all retired now. So I don't actually know who's doing it. But, I mean, our negotiating record's not been great, has it, Martin? You report on this regularly, but you reported on other stories more up your street than mine. But, I mean, the Chagos Islands, that didn't go too well. I mean, the fishing, that ain't gone too well. I mean, every single time we've been promised, and the E-gates, I do know about that. That was a complete con. Martin, there's been no deal with them on E-gates at all. They made that up and they put ministers out on media rounds trying to convince Poor old tourists at Stansted. Oh, don't worry, it's all going to be hunky-dory. It's not. It's going to get worse getting into the EU when they bring in the fingerprinting in October. So there is spin going on, spin galore, Martin. It's just guys like you have got to keep doing what you do and exposing this and saying, well, wait a minute, what exactly is going on here? I don't even know what's going on here. I'm really looking forward to the announcement on Monday, but I am not optimistic, I'm afraid. If we haven't been able to get a deal all these years now, what is it that suddenly happened, Martin? Suddenly, right now, with this government and this negotiating team, and we've got this fantastic new agreement. What's in it for the French? Why would they suddenly start saying, oh, that's all right, then we'll take the boat people back, when they haven't for the last 8 years? And even before that, I can tell you, even when I was doing it with the lorry drops, they weren't taking them back then either. And we haven't had a deal with the French since the gentleman's agreement back in the 90s, and that didn't apply to us. So I'm sorry, I'm going on a bit, Martin, but I'm a little bit worried about this. I really am. I want to see the detail of it, and no doubt I'll come back and have a chat with you when I see it, but I'm not, as we speak, optimistic.
Well, why don't we just make a deal now, Tony Smith? I'll see you on Monday. And I'll see you on Monday, and no doubt we'll have the same conversation again about this being a terrible deal. Tony Smith, always a pleasure to talk to you. We've got to keep laughing, mate. Otherwise, we're going to weep into our cup of tea. Former Director of Border Force there, Tony Smith, always a pleasure. Now then, let's cross the line to that man, our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, who's been answering questions on welfare reforms.
That we reform the welfare system because it doesn't work and it traps people, and therefore we're going to press ahead with the reforms, and the principles are if you can work, you should work. If you need help getting into work, you should have that help and support. But if you can't work, there's no prospect of working, then you must be protected. We need to get it right. That's why we've been talking to colleagues and having a constructive discussion. We've now arrived at a package that delivers on the principles with some adjustments, and that's the right reform. And I'm really pleased now that we're able to take this forward.
Well, those adjustments are major concessions which will leave a black hole in the public finances. How are you going to fill that?
Well, the changes still mean we can deliver the reform that we need, and that's very important because the system needs to be a system that is fit for the future, and this system isn't fit for the future. And all colleagues are signed up to that. But having listened, we've made the adjustments. The funding will be set out in the budget in the usual way, as you'd expect later in the year. But the most important thing is that we can make the reform we need. We talked to colleagues who've made powerful representations, as a result of which we've got a package which I think will work and we can get it right. And for me, getting that package adjusted in that way is the right thing to do. It means it's the right balance, and it's common sense that we can now get on with it.
Okay,
That's Prime Minister there on benefits. But now it's time for your latest news headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon. 3:30, the top story this hour, a life sentence for Marcus Monzo after he murdered 14-year-old schoolboy Daniel Angerin. The 37-year-old also injured 5 others, including 2 police officers, in a sword attack last April. We're expecting to hear from Daniel Angerin's family outside court later this hour. Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed a major climb down on welfare reforms after over 100 Labour MPs threatened to derail the bill. The move slashes £3 billion from expected savings. Some rebels are pleased, but others still fear a 2-tier welfare system. 4 people have been arrested by counter-terror police after a pro-Palestinian group broke into RAF Brize Norton. The suspects are being held under the Terrorism Act. Defence Secretary John Healey has now called for a full review of all security at bases across the UK. France has agreed to take back some Channel migrants under a one-in, one-out deal set to be unveiled next week. And as temperatures soar, amber heat health alerts are in place across much of England. With highs of 34 degrees possible, it could be the hottest start to Wimbledon on record, while Glastonbury goers can expect a sun-soaked weekend. Those are the headlines. For now, more news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update here on GB News. From the Met Office, we're talking about the heat rising this weekend, but it won't be everywhere that sees it. Hottest conditions across central and eastern England, staying cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some rain here through the day today. It's been a pretty wet day across the Highlands. Further rain and drizzle to come through the evening and overnight. And many western hills and coasts will keep rain and drizzle on and off. Many low-level areas, though, will stay dry. And certainly a lot of dry weather across the east. A warm old night. Quite breezy out there, and that breeze staying fairly lively through the night. If anything, getting stronger tomorrow across northern Scotland. But it should be a brighter day here. Likely to start a bit dull and damp through the central belt and across Northern Ireland, but that rain edging away. So while blustery, the Highlands particularly having a much cheerier day tomorrow. Turning brighter too across the east coast of Scotland. There's the rain early doors affecting Edinburgh, perhaps Belfast too, but it will be scooting away to the south. A bit damp certainly across the Lake District, and rain and drizzle over the hills of Wales and perhaps the moors of the southwest of England. But a good chunk of England will be dry. It does start fairly cloudy, but I'm optimistic it will turn sunnier as the day goes on. The main exception to that will be this zone across the far north of England, where it stays dull. Certainly across a good part of Cumbria, it'll stay a bit wet. Some rain at times maybe for Anglesey, and around the coasts of the southwest it may stay a bit murky. But with some sunshine, look at those temperatures up to 30 degrees Celsius. Much more pleasant, much fresher conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some good spells of sunshine here too. And again, on Sunday, most of Scotland set fair. There'll be some thickening cloud, bringing some drizzly conditions back to Northern Ireland, staying a bit damp across Cumbria as well. But otherwise, again, many places dry on Sunday, getting brighter through the day. And if anything, Sunday a little hotter over these eastern parts of England, 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Hotter still by the time we get to Monday. Goodbye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. In Glasgow, the M8 westbound between junctions 15 and 16 is delayed due to a road incident. In Cumbria, the M6 southbound between junctions 37 and 36 has a lane closure due to a collision. Staffordshire's A50 eastbound faces 15-minute delays. Northamptonshire's A43 northbound is congested with similar delays. Suffolk's A14 eastbound sees major delays. Kent's M25 anti-clockwise between junctions 3 and 2 is congested. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast reports significant disruptions between London Euston and Milton Keynes Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:41. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the MI6 chief, Blaise Metoeli, has a dark family history because, according to the Daily Mail, her grandfather was known as Hitler's chief informant and referred to him as the Butcher. So is the granddaughter of a Nazi really fit to be head of the MI6? Well, join us now for a debate is the former senior military intelligence officer and the veteran, Philip Ingram, and the chair of Communities Against Violence, Ken Hines. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I'm going to start with you, Ken Hines, if I could. Do you think it's appropriate that somebody who's at the head of MI6 has, let's put it mildly, is something of a dark family secret?
Really, it troubles me to have someone in charge of such an important aspect of security being the head of it. Simply, I know what trauma does for me. And I know I've had to deal with my own ancestral trauma from slavery. So if it's troubling me, God knows what the grandfather's passed down to her. So that would be my concern, something that needs to be answered.
Now, I think in their defence, MI6 has said that the head of MI6, Blaise Metroelli, never met her paternal grandfather, didn't know an awful lot about him, apparently. But nevertheless, it does make you wonder, say, if she was in a government role, I don't know, for the Conservative Party, and there was a link to a Nazi, there'd be a big public hoo-ha about this, but they don't seem to be that concerned, perhaps because they agree with her political appointment.
Is that to me?
Yes, Ken.
Yeah, I'm saying again, you know, personally, they've got to certify people like myself that they have done, that they've answered all those awkward questions and they're satisfied with the response they're getting back. Because for a person to be in that sensitive position with all that intel would concern me that they're not 100% sure of her integrity at this stage.
Sure, and it's also worth pointing out some of the details of this individual. Konstantin Dobrowolski was a Nazi collaborator who boasted, according to the Daily Mail, about killing Jews. He was a Ukrainian who defected from the Red Army to become Adolf Hitler's chief informant in the country. That is the paternal grandfather on your screen to the right. And then, of course, is the new head of MI6, Blaise Metroelli, on the left. Now, a lot of people would say, so what? You know, it's not her. It's just a distant relative, a grandfather. But it has to be said, the nickname "the Butcher" might be something of a giveaway, Ken Hines. Are you saying there's no chance ever of forgive and forget? The family association is simply too grave.
I think for the position that we're in, the post that she's now the head of, it's too much to leave to chance. I'm surprised that Israel isn't making some noise about this, because I'm probably going to reach out to them to see if I get them on board, to put some pressure on the UK government to rethink that appointment.
So, Ken Hines, are you saying that the association, the family tainting, if you like, is so grave? Do you think she's not fit for this appointment? She never should have been hired in the first place, and perhaps she ought to resign?
Absolutely, and I'm surprised that the Labour MPs that would now be aware of this, to maybe put that something in Parliament to make others aware of it, because I'm sure there's other people who feels like me that feels unsettled by that appointment. And I'm just throwing it out there to saying, look, you know, I've gone through enough trauma in my life, and I know what that's done for me. And the last thing I would want is someone whose grandfathers are so tainted to be in charge of this sensitive department.
And I think you raised a good point there. I wonder if the Labour Party, if they knew about this and she was an appointment for, I don't know, the Conservative Party or a political party they didn't like, or a TV channel they didn't like, I wonder if they'd be quite so forgiving then about her Nazi links. We'll have to wait and see. But look, I always value your opinion. Thank you for coming on the show. And that is, of course, the Chair of Communities Against Violence, Ken Hines. Ken, thanks for your time, as ever. Now you can search some holiday sun this year. Then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Temperatures are likely to be 5 to 10 degrees above the average for June across parts of France and Spain. Very hot conditions persisting here. A bit of a breeze, but also temperatures above average in the Canaries, getting over 30 degrees for the next few days. Highs over 32 across Italy. Plenty of hot and sunny weather here. A few showers across mainland parts of Greece, but most of the Greek islands have turned a little bit cooler with some pleasant sunshine here and plenty more sunshine to come around the Mediterranean into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You have a very nice accent, and I always thought
but obviously I'm totally wrong. I've learned something already straight away.
I mean, we've interviewed together on countless occasions. I thought you would have picked up on my English accent.
Oh no, you're just changing it now. You're changing it a bit here.
Yeah, I'm just putting it on for you, mate.
Well, I'll tell you this, Chesney. I think it's amazing that we're talking about a tour next March for a man like you, and that shows you the extent to which you have to be organised to do these things. I thought like you're advertising this for this month or next month. Why the need to go so early?
Oh no, it's just to give people plenty of advance notice. You know, these days life comes up very fast, doesn't it? So I'm always touring, Eamon. I've actually got some headline shows coming up next week. I'm in Cardiff and Southampton, but we've just announced this headline tour for next year. So I thought I'd get it out there and let people know in advance. You know.
And Chesney, just looking at your Instagram now, I mean, you've got a sense of humour, haven't you? Because you've been putting videos out there saying people think I'm a one-hit wonder, but let me tell you, there'll be a lot more songs than just the one that you're most famous for.
Yes. Contrary to popular belief, there are other songs. So looking forward, I've got a new album out right now, Ellie, and it's all been very, very well received. I'm so honoured and grateful for that. And so, yeah, I'll be performing some of this new album out on the road soon. You guys should come.
GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Let's get straight to the Old Bailey now. The mother and the father of Daniel Angerin are speaking at the Old Bailey.
We carry that light with us, even in this dark time. We want to express our deepest thanks to the police, prosecution team, and all those who work tirelessly to seek the truth. Your dedication has meant more than words can fully convey. To everyone who supported us through this ordeal, friends, family, our church, our workplaces, our children's schools, and even strangers, thank you. Your love and support has been a lifeline. We honour Daniel's memory, not in the shadow of this tragedy, but through the love and happiness that he brought to us and all those who knew him. Thank you.
That was the father there of murdered Daniel Angerin, 14, of course, killed by Marcus Monzo with a samurai sword in broad daylight on his way to school. Those are the words of his father, his amazing father, Dr. Ebenezer Angerin, gave a short statement there. How do they find the humility to thank the police? They thanked their friends, they thanked family, they thanked their church, and even complete strangers who gave them comfort. Said, your words mean more than you'll ever know. And he said, we want to honour Daniel's memory, not in darkness, but in lightness. And with that, they simply turned on their heels and walked away. I always find such dignity so moving. I really, really do. And if we can cross now to Mark White. Mark White is joining us, our home and security editor, Mark White. Well, we waited a while for that press statement. It was short, to the point, but again, what incredible dignity displayed by a father who's been through such an unimaginable loss, Mark White.
Yes, I mean, very, very composed Dr. Ebenezer Anjurin there, and his wife Grace beside him. They're not saying anything, but just standing beside her husband to offer that emotional support as they spoke in very dignified terms about the loss, of course, of this young man that had the most incredible future ahead of him, a young man that could play the violin and that could play the piano, and that was so academically bright. He was top of his class and just apparently just the most incredible young man, and to have had that life and that future snatched away from him in such a violent manner, as Ebenezer Anjurin said in his victim impact statement. They've been denied the opportunity to see the most incredible young man that Daniel would have become. They will never be able to see him marry or to have children. And of course, as absolutely profound as their grief is, you've got to remember the other people caught up in this horrific event that day as well, Martin. The 5 other people who were injured, some of them very severely, by Marcus Monzo, who set about them with that samurai sword. And the victim impact statements we heard from them talking about how they will live with this, how they are very concerned. One of them, the police officer, talking about how she was afraid to go out alone. She feared being attacked and wouldn't be able to defend herself.
Okay, thank you, Mark White, for that summary. We'll, of course, have more on this story in the next hour. And also how Sir Keir Starmer regrets his Island of Strangers moment. That's another U-turn forward in a month as I make it. But first, here's your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update here on GB News. From the Met Office, we're talking about the heat rising this weekend, but it won't be everywhere that sees it. Hottest conditions across central and eastern England, staying cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some rain here through the day today. It's been a pretty wet day across the Highlands. Further rain and drizzle to come through the evening and overnight. And many western hills and coasts will keep rain and drizzle on and off. Many low-level areas, though, will stay dry, and certainly a lot of dry weather across the east. A warm old night. Quite breezy out there, and that breeze staying fairly lively through the night. If anything, getting stronger tomorrow across northern Scotland. But it should be a brighter day here. Likely to start a bit dull and damp through the central belt and across Northern Ireland, but that rain edging away. So while blustery, the Highlands particularly having a much, much cheerier day tomorrow. Turning brighter too across the east coast of Scotland. There's the rain early doors affecting Edinburgh, perhaps Belfast too, but it will be scooting away to the south. A bit damp certainly across the Lake District, and rain and drizzle over the hills of Wales and perhaps the moors of the southwest of England. But a good chunk of England will be dry. It does start fairly cloudy, but I'm optimistic it will turn sunnier as the day goes on. The main exception to that will be this zone across the far north of England, where it stays dull. Certainly across a good part of Cumbria, it'll stay a bit wet. Some rain at times maybe for Anglesey, and around the coasts of the southwest it may stay a bit murky. But with some sunshine, look at those temperatures, up to 30 degrees Celsius. Much more pleasant, much fresher conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some good spells of sunshine here too. And again, on Sunday, most of Scotland set fair. There'll be some thickening cloud, bringing some drizzly conditions back to Northern Ireland, staying a bit damp across Cumbria as well. But otherwise, again, many places dry on Sunday, getting brighter through the day. And if anything, Sunday a little hotter over these eastern parts of England, 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Hotter still by the time we get to Monday. Goodbye.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M74 northbound, traffic is restricted between junctions 13 and 12 due to an incident causing 15-minute delays. In Cumbria, the M6 southbound between junctions 37 and 36 has one lane closed, causing 30-minute delays. The M62 westbound has a lane closure between junctions 26 and 25 due to a broken-down vehicle. Nottinghamshire's M1 northbound faces issues between junctions 27 and 28. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast services from London Euston to Milton Keynes Central and through Wolverhampton face major disruptions. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. on this glorious Friday afternoon, and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, the Hainault sword attacker Marcus Monzo is sentenced for at least 40 years after killing a schoolboy in broad daylight in northeast London. The father of the victim says it's been his worst nightmare. As Keir Starmer caves in to 120 Labour benefit rebels, it marks the under-fire Prime Minister's third U-turn inside a month. After first backtracking on the winter fuel allowance cut and then being forced into a rape gang inquiry the Labour Party voted against. Is Keir Starmer on the brink, and might we even see a dramatic early general election? And shocking figures obtained exclusively by GB News show that 20 NHS trusts are spending an eye-watering £3.3 million of your money, the taxpayers' money, on diversity, inclusivity and equality roles. Now, that's the equivalent of 116 nurses. A lot of people think that's a complete and utter waste of money, and we'll be naming and shaming the worst offenders. And a one-legged cricketer is feeling stumped after he had his disability benefit stopped for not being disabled enough. I'll be joined in the studio by Sean Rigby, who lost his leg aged 2 in a tractor accident, to see what he thinks of the Department of Work and Pensions decision to bowl him out of his PIP benefit. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. So what do you make of the fact £3.3 million of taxpayers' money is being spent at 20 NHS trusts on diversity, inclusivity and equality roles? By my beautiful assistant, Eleanor, put FOIs into 100 NHS trusts and only 20 of them even bothered to reply. This money surely should be going on frontline staff, on nurses, to make sure you get the appointments you need, to make sure you get the operations you need. Instead, it's being spent on heaven knows what. They wouldn't even tell us the job titles, but when I looked into the websites of the worst offenders, Guy's and St Thomas, you will not believe what your money is being spent on. Do you think that's the right thing to be spending money on? Or actually, should it be spent on front-line staff? Let's spend it on more coppers, on more nurses, on more teachers, and less of this inclusivity nonsense. Let me know your thoughts, GBNews.com/your say. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good afternoon to you. Just after 4 o'clock, well, the top story, Marcus Monzo has been jailed for life today with a minimum of 38 years for murdering 14-year-old schoolboy Daniel Angerin with a samurai sword in Hainault last April. The 37-year-old also injured 5 others, including 2 police officers, during a 20-minute rampage. He was found guilty of attempted murder, wounding with intent and carrying an offensive weapon. Well, in the last few minutes outside the Old Bailey, Daniel's father, Dr. Ebenezer Angerin, gave a statement for the whole family, and he said his son was a gifted boy with so much potential.
No verdict or sentence can bring back our son Daniel, who we loved so dearly, but we are grateful that justice has been served. Daniel was taken from us in a way that no family should ever have to endure. His life had so much potential ahead. He was gifted academically, was kind, and had a generous spirit that touched everyone who knew him. We carry that light with us, even in this dark time.
In other news, Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed a major climb down on his welfare reforms after a rebellion by more than 100 Labour MPs had threatened to sink the bill. It's a move described by Dame Meg Hillier as a win for Labour values.
The government's been really listening to Labour MPs and is going to protect people who are currently in receipt of personal independence payments so that it won't decrease. And also people who receive the health element of universal credit, that will also be protected. So, you know, in line with Labour values, it's about protecting the most vulnerable. But I would say all of us want to see people in work who can be in work and want to work. And we're very committed to this bill, which promotes movement into work. But these changes are really critical to protecting the most vulnerable.
Well, it is the third U-turn in just the space of a month, and it slashes up to £3 billion from the bill's expected savings, casting doubt over the Chancellor's economic plans. Some rebels have welcomed the concessions, but others say they still vote against the bill if it goes ahead over fears of a 2-tier welfare system. Earlier, Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall spoke to us here on GB News, and she says that claimants of disability and health benefits will now be protected, with cuts applying only to new applicants.
I really believe these are positive changes. We've worked hard to get agreement on this. There's really, really strong commitment to the principles of reforming our welfare state. Those who can work should get help, and we have the biggest ever investment into employment support for sick and disabled people, but also to protect those who can never work, make sure their incomes are protected and make sure they're never reassessed again.
4 people have been arrested by counter-terror police after a break-in at RAF Briars Norton where military planes were sprayed with red paint. Footage posted by pro-Palestinian group Palestine Action showed activists targeting an RAF jet engine using a scooter and fire extinguishers. 3 suspects, aged 24, 29 and 36, were arrested under the Terrorism Act. A 4th woman held for assisting an offender. The government now plans to prescribe Palestine Action, making support for the group illegal. Defence Secretary John Healey has now ordered a full review of UK-based security after what he described as a deeply disturbing breach of the base. France has agreed to take back some Channel migrants in a new one-in, one-out deal with the UK. It means that for every illegal migrant arriving here, one will be returned across the Channel. It's the first agreement of its kind aimed at stopping repeat crossings and cracking down on smuggling gangs. The Home Secretary is expected to unveil the plan next week. The critics, including the Shadow Paymaster General Richard Holden, say it's too little, too late.
It's going to actually increase the number of people crossing the Channel, and it's going to be sort of weird merry-go-round in the middle of the English Channel as we have people coming on one side and then shifting them back just for others to come on the reverse again. It's completely ridiculous. What we should have is a proper deterrent, like we had with the Rwanda scheme, which said if you come here illegally, you do not get to stay in the UK.
And back to Martin in just a moment. But first, a breaking line from the United States regarding the ongoing court case at the Supreme Court on birthright citizenship in the United States. The Supreme Court ruling 6-3 to curb the power of other judges to block presidential orders, paving the way for that controversial birthright citizenship order that could well take effect within 30 days. Donald Trump, in just the last few minutes, saying that Supreme Court ruling win is a giant success for his administration, and we are expecting to hear from Donald Trump later this hour. We'll bring that to you as it happens. Martin, next. First, though, let's take a quick look at the markets.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a look at the markets for you just after 4 o'clock. The pound will buy you $1.373 and €1.172. The price of gold is £2,386.30. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,787 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Thank you, Sam. And we'll be covering that breaking news shortly. Astonishing there, the angel relatives verdict in America. That means if you go to the United States illegally and you have children, those children are no longer eligible to be automatic US citizens. That's a huge victory for Donald Trump. We'll have more on that. And I think we're crossing to Donald Trump perhaps later in this hour. He'll be seeing that as a massive, massive victory. But let's get back to some domestic politics now, because are Sir Keir Starmer's days numbered? Because in his latest flip-flop, the Prime Minister says he deeply regrets saying this.
We risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, that encourages some businesses to bring in lower paid workers rather than invest in our young people, or simply one that is sold by politicians to the British people on an entirely false premise, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else people defend the status quo.
That's Keir Starmer wearing the clothes, perhaps, of Nigel Farage. The Island of Strangers comment actually went down well with many people, but the trouble is they don't vote Labour. And this follows, of course, the Prime Minister once again bowing down to pressure as he announced major concessions on the welfare bill. And this completes a hat-trick of policy U-turns by Sir Keir Starmer because, remember this,
did ask Louise Casey, of course, to look at this for a reason, which is to assure me that there wasn't some further step that needed to be taken. I took that decision months ago.
We're just saying sorry in public life is something which frustrates people.
Chris, I put it in place for a reason.
Yeah.
I asked her to report back to me, and I faithfully told you and others I'd look at what she said. She's come back with a report. I've read it in full. She suggests a national inquiry, and that's what I've immediately put in place on a statutory footing. So for 15 years, I've consistently taken steps in this field. I changed the whole prosecution rules when I was Director of Public Prosecutions. So this is not new to me.
No.
This is something I've been calling out and campaigning on for 15 years.
And that's Chopper there swinging in. Now, also, do you remember this?
As that improves, I do want people to feel the benefit of the measures that we are taking, and that is why I want to ensure that more pensioners are eligible for winter fuel. It is important that, as you'd expect, that we are clear we can afford the decisions we're making.
Well, there we go, a trio of flip-flops, and I'm joined in the studio by GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, a lot of people call Sir Keir Starmer Captain Flip-Flop, Mr Flip-Flop, call it what you like, before the general election, and it has to be said, his premiership in this rocky first year next week, as I understand, has been characterised by some pretty big climb downs, and they seem to be coming thick and fast. Ask the question, is this a PM who's under extreme pressure?
Yes, I think it is. We've had 3 U-turns very recently on the winter fuel allowance, then on the rape gangs, the inquiry that wasn't necessary until it is, and now welfare. Lots of questions about the Prime Minister's authority. It's less than a year since he came in, a majority of about 160. You would have thought it'd be inconceivable that they could get themselves into the mess that they have. The PM was telling us in The Hague just a couple of days ago that they were pressing ahead, they were going to ignore the noises off, and now a big climb down and a big hole in Rachel Reeves' financial plans, and no idea how it's going to be paid for. It is a mess, and it's astonishing, really, that they let it get to this point because they knew this was unpopular. Now they're talking to MPs. There's plenty of Labour MPs feel basically that they've been ignored by Number 10, that the Prime Minister hasn't engaged with them, hasn't talked to them, and I'm afraid that is coming back to bite him now.
A lot of farmers out there might be hoping there's another U-turn to come, but that perhaps isn't going to happen just yet. Can we talk about this I regret the island of strangers speech? Because, funnily enough, a lot of GB News viewers said that was something that they agreed with him on, that resonated with them. They look around their own home cities and hometowns and do see a huge cultural change in a short period of time. And at the time, I remember Chris Hope and yourself saying you're sounding a bit like Nigel Farage here, but of course it went down very badly with his own party and particularly the Labour left.
Yes, I remember very vividly. He was very hardcore sounding on migration. He did sound a lot like Nigel Farage. He said that line, and then there was a big backlash, and lots of ministers had to go out and defend him, saying we risk becoming an island of strangers, which, of course, had an echo of Enoch Powell, that famous Rivers of Blood speech. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has given an interview to Tom Baldwin, who wrote a biography of him that was out just before the election. And in it, he has said that he deeply regrets making that comment. Now, it turns out that that speech coincided with a firebomb attack on one of his houses. His sister-in-law had been in the house at the time. She'd raised the alarm. It was very traumatic for all of them. He says that he really hadn't felt like going in at all. He just had to get through it. He'd skimmed the speech. He hadn't read it clearly. He didn't make the connection with Enoch Powell, nor did any of his speechwriters, but that he really, really regrets it. But I think it's showing that, you know, they're trying to appeal to red wall voters on the one hand, the influence of Morgan McSweeney, his chief of staff, but on the other hand, that sort of comment is going to alienate a whole lot of people on his sort of Labour left-wing base. And, you know, the winter fuel allowance cuts, the welfare cuts, are displeasing a lot of Labour supporters and Labour MPs, and you wonder what would happen if another party perhaps came along on the left.
And and that was talked about this week because there was rumours of a Jeremy Corbyn-backed party which could nibble 10% of the vote. And that, of course, would hammer the Labour Party and, of course, the Greens, who've been taking that pro-Palestine vote. But quickly speaking, do you think they're making a tactical blunder by trying to drape themselves in union flags, by trying to sound tough and immigrant? They're trying to appeal to the red wall, and it doesn't seem to be working anyway. And at the same time, they're alienating the Labour left. They're walking a tightrope act, and it seems that they just keep falling off.
I think it's extremely difficult for them and for the Conservatives and basically for everybody who's not Reform, because look at Reform, look at that MRP poll. Yesterday, Nigel Farage making all sorts of promises. Of course, they've not been in government, so it's easy to say these things. But, you know, Labour, the bottom line is they promised change. They promised change. They promised to deliver for working people. They promised growth. Growth is what they need. They're a year in. There's precious little of it. Without growth, we don't get the money for public services. Things don't get better. So that's what they need. They need growth to make the change. They've brought in a lot of measures, long-term investments, but those are going to take many, many years to feed through. Will it be in time to make a difference?
Catherine Forster, excellent as ever. Thank you very, very much indeed. And moving on, a staggering 1/5 of all Brits now claim to be suffering from a mental health condition, with women and young people most likely to suffer. But with Britain's sickness benefits bill ballooning to £100 billion by 2030, is this mental health epidemic entirely genuine? Well, joining me now is the psychologist Emma Kenny and the senior therapist Sally Baker. Welcome to you both. I'll start with you, if I could, Emma Kenny, mainly because it's been way too long. It's a delight to speak to you again. Emma, you know, I've campaigned in the past on male suicide reduction. Very, very hot topic for me. I've lost friends way, way too early. It's a serious, serious topic. But have we got to a position now where the sheer volume of claims might suggest that perhaps not all of them are genuine?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that lots of them will be genuine, but it doesn't mean that the person claiming doesn't think that they're genuine, which might seem like a juxtaposition. But the reality is, as somebody who's totally dedicated and an advocate for mental health, my father killed himself. So at the end of the day, I appreciate how challenging these kind of issues are and how real they are. But what we have is a lack of understanding now about emotional cogency. So young people particularly, so if you look at the research, about 12 times as many young people now feel depressed and anxious and have a real myriad of these challenging emotions that actually, if you draw down and drill deep, are actually very contextual with the human condition and suffering. And the problem is that we're bringing young people up with an idea that if they feel sad, for example, they're depressed. They're not. It's a whole world apart. But the point is, if your understanding is that when I feel sad, I must be depressed, therefore I'm also going to be somebody who can't work, can't succeed in school. And actually the research shows, for example, if you're lower socioeconomic class, if you aren't highly educated, if you're somebody who lives in the north of England like I do, or Scotland, you're more at risk of these things as well because of just a breakdown in community cohesion, for example. It feels as if right now that people are convincing themselves that there is something wrong with them, as opposed to a reaction to a climate, an environment and community that actually has issues that are real, such as levels of helplessness, hopelessness and fear. So it's a multifaceted, multi-layered response to a question that seems simple on the surface, but is very, very challenging to answer in general.
OK, Sally Baker, senior therapist, you're nodding along there in huge agreement. So let me up the ante slide to try and get something extra out of you. Are people gaming the system? We have £100 billion worth of PIP claims coming through. Mental health, anxiety, it's a huge part of it. A lot of people watching this show might be a bit older. They might think this is all snowflakes. It's ridiculous. People are being rewarded. They're being indulged. What about talking to giving them some tough love rather than giving them a PIP payment, rather than giving them a prescription? How about you help them to get better and get back into work, because that makes you better. The gift of work. Stop rewarding people's fragility.
Absolutely. Martin, you're right. Give them some treatment. There is no treatment available. Emma and I are both advocates of people with mental health challenges. We're both on the same side. There is no treatment. Awareness is one thing. There's no shame anymore, so there's more awareness around mental health. But with awareness on its own doesn't get people back into work, doesn't get people cured. Putting people onto antidepressants that are mainly ineffective doesn't really help anyone. It's about awareness on its own is not enough. It's about putting treatment in place. For every £8 spent in the NHS, only £1 is spent on mental health. It's been the poor relation within the NHS for decades. It's all coming home to roost. All of the socioeconomic pressures on young people, you know, the gig economy, expensive housing, not being able to see a clear trajectory through in one's life as they used to when in previous generations. These young people are hugely challenged by the circumstances that are beyond their control.
Yeah, do you know what? I agree with both of you. I really do think it is harder for kids these days, certainly, when you think about the economic situation, the lack of housing, affordable housing. When I moved to London back in the 90s, you know, you could buy a house straight away, and that's an impossible dream for young people now. I get all that. I get that, you know, there are a lack of opportunities, but what I'm concerned about is that, you know, what used to be, you know, life's tough, let's do something about it, is now life's tough. Let's just say I've got a mental health condition. I'll retreat into my bedroom and I won't be a positive member of society. And Emma Kenny, we've got to break that cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we know from clearly research that's been done is there are three main issues. First of all, competency, autonomy, and also relatedness. So basically, if you think about what you were just saying, it's actually perfect description. So your transition into adulthood used to be pretty immediate. 16 to 18, off you go, get a job, probably buy a house, get married, have kids. That was something that gave you responsibility, accountability. Then on top of that, competency. You have to work. There's no other option, because without work, you can't eat. Therefore, you would get a job. That gave you purpose. And then relatedness, we didn't have social media. We know social media's had a massive impact. For some people, incredibly positively, like GB News, like myself in my work. But for a lot of people, it's actually disconnected us whilst making us feel that we have some strange connection with a homogenous group of people we'll never meet. So those three issues are massive. We have this extended childhood, which on one level feels good because we're protected, we've got foundation with our family. But actually, because it's so extended, it protracts the development emotionally and means that people aren't getting the resources, education, understanding and actual accountability that they need. So you're right.
Emma, I'm going to quickly give the last word to Sally Baker there. You've been nodding so much during this. You need some treatment for your neck after this, Sally Baker. You totally agree with what Emma Kenny said. But on a serious point, is there any gravity in this notion that young people now, they're basically a bunch of snowflakes?
Some of them might be gaming the system, but as we've broken the social contract, you know, they go to university, they work hard at school, they work hard in their studies, they come out with 50 grand's worth of debt, and they're still going to get a starter-only job if they're lucky. The social contract's been broken. We're not taking care of our young people, just like we're not taking care of our old people. We need to put money into curing, into new treatments, into new approaches, into new ways of delivering mental health care at a community level. And social media and all the other things that Emma mentioned have had a huge impact on mental well-being.
Do you know what? Can I just say, you know, it's been a bit of a difficult show today. We've had like another child being killed. We had a samurai sword event, and you know, I've actually thoroughly enjoyed talking to you two. It's actually been like a little bit of therapy for myself. I think you're right. You know, we've just got to like think things through, and yeah, thank you both. It's been really enjoyable. Thank you, Emma Kenny and senior therapist Sally Baker. Thank you. Wonderful. I really enjoyed that. Now, stay tuned as we'll be hearing live from Donald Trump on his huge Supreme Court victory. But first, hey up, we'll be crossing to Cleethorpes as it's their Armed Forces Day. Beautiful. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
At GB News, we are proud to stand for you, for the Britain you love, for the communities you live in. That's what makes us the fearless champions of Britain. Its voices and its values. Because we, at GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our viewers and listeners. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What is the state of our economy? What is the state of our National Health Service? What is the state of our schools?
What on earth is going on?
Understanding Britain means understanding the state we are in. This is State of the Nation with me, Matt Goodwin, Wednesdays, Thursdays and Fridays from 8 p.m. on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:27. You're with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, veterans and serving personnel will be honoured in Cleethorpes today as part of the National Armed Forces Day. And joining me now is GB News' reporter Anna Riley. Hey up, Anna. You're up there in Cleethorpes, an area I know well. Tell us all about it. It looks wonderful.
Hey up, yes, and good afternoon. It's a fantastic boost here for Cleethorpes. They've been chosen as the national organisers, the national event for Armed Forces Day. And they're not just celebrating tomorrow, it's a huge 3-day event here. I'm delighted to be joined by Alex Baxter, one of the main people behind this event. Alex, just tell us what the event's all about and why it's so important for Cleethorpes as well.
It is important for Cleethorpes, it's important for the nation, it's important for the region. This is for the opportunity to say thank you to the men and women of our armed forces, the veterans and the armed forces community. That includes family and friends who support us diligently throughout the year, without whom we would have real problems in the world, and particularly nowadays. Having said that, we're here to say thank you to the men and women of the armed forces. We do this, it's about a year to plan. We do it with 8 unpaid volunteers. We're all unpaid, and we all stand here because it's almost a case of king and country, or having a wolf by the ears. Once you got a hold of it, if you let it go, it's going to bite you, so we just continue. No, it's a delight to be able to do this. We're here organising the first event of the weekend, which is the carnival tonight, Armed Forces Community Carnival, and we would engage directly with the community, allow all the children to come along. They're on the floats. It's absolutely marvellous. Over 110 floats, and we've built this up and brought it back 3 years ago, and now it's an embedded part of the Armed Forces Weekend. Tomorrow is the big day, and we will have the Secretary of State here, Chief of the Defence Staff, Chief of the Air Staff, Generals, the lot, all to see the parade led by the band of the Coldstream Guards, and we have the British Army Band, the RAF Waddington Pipes and Drums, and we will have the contingent led by the Royal Navy Ceremonial Squad, who are tripped all the way up from Portsmouth to be with us rather than stay in London to do ceremonial. So we're very, very pleased to get them out and about in the regions, because that's what it's all about. We will have, obviously, the Red Arrows. 12:30 will overfly from a rear crowd entry over the Knoll, where the saluting dice is, all the great and the good, and of course we are looking forward so much to it. We could turn out somewhere around about 300,000 people. It's an amazing event. It brings about £3.5 million commercial benefit into the borough just over one weekend, and we do this free of charge. So we're delighted to do this. However, I would say thank you to Secretary of State having selected us for the National, although I would say 4 weeks notice, well, we can do it. Nobody does it like us, so we're very, very pleased to deliver this event on behalf of the nation as the first return to formal Armed Forces national events. We're here doing it, we will deliver.
And as a veteran yourself, how important is it for us to honour our veterans and to thank our current armed forces as well?
Well, normally they don't want thanks. They just integrate back into the community because they have loads and loads of skill sets. This perception that they may be mad, bad or sad is absolutely untrue. I'll do a bit of myth busting, tell you they're very, very qualified, very educated and very disciplined. In fact, they have a work ethic. There's a cultural shock, isn't there? We love it. So we will come, work with the community, work with the nation. We're here for your benefit, and we would simply ask you to come along and say thank you to the men and women of our armed forces over this weekend, because they deserve your applause. They defend our nation, they defend our rights, and it is all about British values, and we are part of this nation. We're an integral part. We love it.
And why is this community so passionate about the armed forces? What are the links that North East Lincolnshire have got?
Well, it's a heavy recruiting area, so in actual fact you will see loads of cadets. One in 7 people have a connection directly or indirectly with the armed forces in some shape or form, and it is a heavy recruiting area. So I think for some time Navy, Army, Air Force all have recruited here. We're in the middle of Bomber County, which is Lincolnshire, for the Royal Air Force. The Royal Marines, the Army and the Royal Navy all recruit in this area, and they get very, very well educated people. And I'm delighted to say I have also got another hat as I sit with the chairman of the Sixth Form College here, outstanding college I would add, and of course we provide the educated children, students, in order they go to university, get their degree qualifications, come back and be part of our industry, our wind farm industry, high-paid technical industries here. This is what we want, and we will retain them in the area. They won't just disappear and not come back.
Thank you so much, Alex.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you for speaking to us this afternoon, and what a fantastic event it will be here in Cleethorpes, Martin. It's just heating up this afternoon, and it's going to be fantastic. A real way of thanking our armed forces and our veterans for what they do for our country.
Majestic stuff. I can almost hear the entire nation standing up and singing God Save the King there. And Alex, wow, he fought for Queen and Country, can certainly talk for England. Beautiful stuff. Thank you very much there, joining us live from Cleethorpes. And lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, including we'll be crossing live to US President Donald Trump after his massive Supreme Court victory, of course. This is the angel relatives, children born in the United States from those people who went to the country illegally will no longer be entitled to US citizenship. A huge victory for Donald Trump. We'll cross to the president next, but first, here's your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
4:30, the top story this hour. Marcus Monzo has been jailed for life for murdering schoolboy Daniel Andrin with a samurai sword. The 37-year-old also injured 5 others, including 2 police officers in the April attack. Daniel's father says his son had so much potential.
We honour Daniel's memory, not in the shadow of this tragedy, but through the love and happiness that he brought to us and all those who knew him.
Press conference imminent at the White House after Donald Trump says it's a giant win following a Supreme Court ruling that limits judges' powers to block presidential orders. The ruling clears the way for Trump's controversial ban on birthright citizenship for children of undocumented migrants. That could now take effect in just 30 days. Here, Sir Keir Starmer has confirmed a major climb down on welfare reforms after over 100 Labour MPs threatened to derail the bill. The move slashes $3 billion from expected savings. Some rebels are pleased, but others still fear a 2-tier welfare system. 4 people have been arrested by counter-terror police after a pro-Palestinian group broke into RAF Bryce Norton. The suspects are being held under the Terrorism Act. And as temperatures soar, amber heat health alerts are in place across much of England. Highs of 34 degrees possible this weekend. Could be the hottest start to Wimbledon on record, while Glastonbury goers can expect a sun-soaked weekend. Those are the headlines for now. More news at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update here on GB News. From the Met Office, we're talking about the heat rising this weekend, but it won't be everywhere that sees it. Hottest conditions across central and eastern England, staying cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some rain here through the day today. It's been a pretty wet day across the Highlands. Further rain and drizzle to come through the evening and overnight. And many western hills and coasts will keep rain and drizzle on and off. Many low-level areas, though, will stay dry. And certainly a lot of dry weather across the east. A warm old night. Quite breezy out there, and that breeze staying fairly lively through the night. If anything, getting stronger tomorrow across northern Scotland. But it should be a brighter day here. Likely to start a bit dull and damp through the central belt and across Northern Ireland, but that rain edging away. So while blustery, the Highlands particularly having a much cheerier day tomorrow. Turning brighter too across the east coast of Scotland. There's the rain early doors affecting Edinburgh, perhaps Belfast too, but it will be scooting away to the south. A bit damp certainly across the Lake District, and rain and drizzle over the hills of Wales and perhaps the moors of the southwest of England. But a good chunk of England will be dry. It does start fairly cloudy, but I'm optimistic it will turn sunnier as the day goes on. The main exception to that will be this zone across the far north of England, where it stays dull. Certainly across a good part of Cumbria, it'll stay a bit wet. Some rain at times maybe for Anglesey, and around the coasts of the southwest it may stay a bit murky. But with some sunshine, look at those temperatures up to 30 degrees Celsius. Much more pleasant, much fresher conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some good spells of sunshine here too. And again, on Sunday, most of Scotland set fair. There'll be some thickening cloud, bringing some drizzly conditions back to Northern Ireland, staying a bit damp across Cumbria as well. But otherwise, again, many places dry on Sunday, getting brighter through the day. And if anything, Sunday a little hotter over these eastern parts of England, 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Hotter still by the time we get to Monday. Goodbye.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M74 northbound, an incident between junctions 13 and 12 causes a 20-minute delay. The A477 is closed from Sageston to Milton due to an accident. In Staffordshire, the M6 southbound between junctions 11 and 10A experiences a 10-minute delay. The A43 northbound in Northamptonshire is congested with a 15-minute delay. The M25 anti-clockwise in Kent faces a 20-minute delay between junctions 3 and 2 due to congestion. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast and London North Western Railway suffer disruptions between London Euston and Milton Keynes Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back. Your time is 4:39. You with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, just to remind you, any minute now, we'll be crossing live to the US President Donald Trump after his huge Supreme Court victory. That's over, of course, the so-called angel relatives. There was a legal constitutional right for anybody born in America, even if their parents entered the country illegally, granted automatic US citizenship. That has been overturned today. It's a huge story, and we're waiting to hear from Donald Trump shortly, and we'll cross that live as it happens. But let's get back to the studio now, because I'm joined by the first amputee cricketer, Sean Rigby. He's lost his disability benefits after being filmed playing for his local club. Now, the Department for Work and Pensions claimed the video showed that he wasn't disabled enough. And I'm joined in the studio by that man, the amputee cricketer, Sean Rigby. Sean, thank you for coming down to join us in the studio here in Westminster. It's an incredible story. So you've got one leg. I understand you lost your leg when you were 2, when you were when you were a kid, and you've played cricket healthily. You're a huge inspiration to people, and you've had your benefits taken away. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I've played cricket since the age of 7. Back in 2012, I went on the first England physical disability tour to Dubai. Obviously, an amazing experience. Recently, back in August last year, I received a letter from the DWP to say that there was a report against me and I had to go for an interview under caution. Basically, somebody reported me for playing cricket and taking my family to Disneyland Paris on holiday.
But the fact of the matter is, you play cricket for England.
Yeah.
It's not like you're trying to hide it.
No.
No, you've fought through. We can see a picture on the screen now of your. This is when you, as a child, you lost your leg. You have a very painful wound. Just below the knee, right? You have a prosthetic limb. You have to take medication to be out and about. You are registered disabled legally. You played cricket against the odds. You played for your country, and someone's basically dobbed you in.
Yeah, basically, yeah. No reason why. Don't know who. Don't know why they would do it. I just received a letter through the post.
And just to quantify for our viewers and listeners, you've received benefits for your disability, which is completely legal. You've only got one leg. You're not gaming the system. No. And you get, how much money do you get? You get a mobility car, and that's all been taken away now.
Yeah. So from 2016, I had standard rate daily living allowance, and then that was, funny enough, awarded through a friend who actually works for DWP and checks the forms and said, "Why don't you claim it? You're entitled to it." So he helped me fill the forms. 3 years later, I had a face-to-face interview with an examiner come to the house, and his exact words were, "Why am I here? Your leg's never going to grow back. You'll get this for life." He then put the forms in for me to get the lower rate mobility, which was granted, and his words again were, in years to come, things are not going to get better. So when things do get slightly worse, just keep just letting the DWP know that circumstances are changing, and then it will come to a point where you might be entitled to the car, which I got back in late 2022, and then they've took everything away now and said that I'm not entitled to any of it.
And Sean, just to be absolutely clear with our viewers and listeners, that you work.
Yeah, I work full-time since 16.
You work full-time since you're 16. You play cricket for your country. You inspire people through what you do. You're not like a leech off the state. You're an amazing, positive member of society. And we're hearing about this £100 billion benefits bill and having to make cutbacks. But how do you feel about the fact they've put the laser on you?
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to be part of the country. I don't know what more proof I have to give. I've got arthritis in the knee because of the prosthetic limb. Obviously, they just don't class an artificial leg as an aid for some unknown reason, but crutches are classed as an aid, but an artificial limb's not. I've got bulges in my lower spine, which are going to spinal surgery, all because of the prosthetic limb.
And have you a right to appeal? Have you decided what you're going to do about this?
So I called yesterday for the mandatory reconsideration. I did that over the phone yesterday. That can take up to 16 weeks. I've got a month to send as much evidence back to them again to prove, for some unknown reason, why I feel that I'm entitled to it. And then if it goes negatively again, then I have the right to appeal again.
I'm sure, Sean, you will understand the fact that we have a ballooning benefits bill, and we need to address that. But when we did an earlier item on the show, about 20% of Brits now claiming they have anxiety and mental health issues, and I was challenging the veracity of some of those claims. I mean, you're clearly disabled.
Yeah. I say my mental health hasn't been brilliant myself, but I've never claimed for that. I've never gone to DWP and said, "Oh, this as well." It's just not. I just get on with life as best I can. I've got a young family, a wife, and cricket was just my time. But I say it's all been taken away.
Presumably, if you sat around and got depressed and didn't work and became morbidly obese, became diabetic, you get all the benefits in the world. But because you're a striver, because you don't want to be defined by your disability, because you play cricket, you're out and about and try and make the best of your life. Do you feel that's, as a consequence, you've been penalised?
Yeah, definitely. As you say, I could sit at home 7 days a week, do nothing, which the DWP obviously want people to do. But for some unknown reason, I get told by the health professionals, stay active, it's good for your mental, physical health. And then I do that, and DWP is basically saying, no, don't do that. So it's just a strange one.
What's your message to the Prime Minister? People like that, the Department of Work and Pension, if they're making an example of people like you, what does it say about our country?
It's shameful. People like myself who've obviously got a physical disability, it can't be faked. I don't know why I'm having to go backwards and forwards to GPs to get evidence to say that I've got an artificial leg, and the stress that I have to go through to live with that. Yeah, it's a bit of a joke, to be honest.
Let me shake you by then, Captain. Thank you. It's an honour to have met you.
And you,
Thanks for coming out to the studio. Thank you very, very much. Well, we contacted the Department of Work and Pension, but they declined to comment because there's an ongoing investigation. Now, we're still waiting to hear from Donald Trump, but first, if you're in search of some holiday sun, then here is the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Temperatures are likely to be 5 to 10 degrees above the average for June across parts of France and Spain. Very hot conditions persisting here. A bit of a breeze, but also temperatures above average in the Canaries, getting over 30 degrees for the next few days. Highs over 32 across Italy. Plenty of hot and sunny weather here. A few showers across mainland parts of Greece, but most of the Greek islands have turned a little bit cooler with some pleasant sunshine here and plenty more sunshine to come around the Mediterranean into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Front page of the Times today says exercise proves the best therapy for keeping cancer at bay. Let's get the views of Tim Vincent.
It's quite an exciting trial, this. There's new findings every single day, isn't it? But I think this has been done over many years by a lot of people. And it actually says, what you'd assume would be the case is that if you exercise, then it keeps your health in a better condition and will keep cancer from returning measurably, notably.
Yeah.
So I think it's 30-something%. And this is on people that have had cancer and then are encouraged to exercise.
Welcome back. Let's cross straight now to US President Donald Trump, who's addressing his Supreme Court victory.
The presidency itself, that's what they've done. And really, it's been an amazing period of time this last hour. There are people elated all over the country. I've seen such happiness and spirit. Sometimes you don't see that, but this case is very important. I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president to stop the American people from getting the policies that they voted for in record numbers. It was a grave threat to democracy, frankly, and instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years, tie it up in the court system. This was a colossal abuse of power which never occurred in American history prior to recent decades, and we've been hit with more nationwide injunctions than were issued in the entire 20th century together. Think of it, more than the entire 20th century, me. I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem, and they've made it very simple. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts, and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people. Thanks for this decision, and thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. This was, in fact, it was the same date, the exact same date, the end of the Civil War. It was meant for the babies of slaves, and it's so clean and so obvious. But this lets us go there and finally win that case, because hundreds of thousands of people are pouring into our country under birthright citizenship, and it wasn't meant for that reason. It was meant for the babies of slaves. So thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with these numerous policies and those that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis, including birthright citizenship, ending sanctuary city funding, suspending refugee resettlement, freezing unnecessary funding, stopping federal taxpayers from paying for transgender surgeries, and numerous other priorities of the American people. We have so many of them. I have a whole list. I'm not going to bore you, and I'm going to have Pam get up and say a few words, but there's really, she can talk as long as she wants, because this is a very important decision. This is a decision that covers a tremendous amount of territory. But I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant. It's a giant. And they should be very proud, and our country should be very proud of the Supreme Court today. And with that, I'd like you to listen to the words of Pam Bondi. She's an incredible Attorney General. We're very proud of her. And as you know, Todd Blanche is with us, and we have so many others that worked on this case and other cases. And I think they're doing a great job. Pam, please say a few words.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for fighting for all Americans. Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. Today, in the 6-3 opinion, Justice Barrett correctly holds that the district court lacks authority to enter nationwide or universal injunctions. These lawless injunctions gave relief to everyone in the world instead of the parties before the court. As the Supreme Court held today, they turned district courts into the imperial judiciary. Active liberal judges have used these injunctions to block virtually all of President Trump's policies. To put this in perspective, there are 94 federal judicial districts. 5 of those districts throughout this country held 35 of the nationwide injunctions. Think about that. 94 districts, and 35 out of the 40 opinions with nationwide injunctions came from 5 liberal districts in this country. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have blocked our policies, from tariffs to military readiness to immigration to foreign affairs, fraud, abuse, and many other issues. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that. No longer. No longer. And on immigration, on a side note, today marks 2,711 arrests on these terrorists and these gangs. Total arrest today with HSI investigations. And thank you, Stephen Miller. Thank you to Homeland Security. Thank you to everyone working hand in hand with the FBI on all of these transnational gangs. TDA has been a huge terror to our country, as well as MS-13, as well as Sinaloa cartels. No longer. No longer. These injunctions have allowed district court judges to be emperors. They vetoed all of President Trump's power, and they cannot do that. This has been a bipartisan problem that has lasted 5 presidential terms, 5 different presidents, and it has ended today. We will continue to fight for President Trump's policies. I want to thank the Office of White House Counsel, Dave Warrington. You and your staff have been incredible. Our Solicitor General's office, John Sowers, Sarah Harris, and Todd Blanche and Emil Bovey. Todd's going to say a few words because we've had another major ruling today on transgender books and some other great wins that we've had. But no longer will they have this power in our country. It is the president's authority under his executive branch to do everything to fight for the American people, and he will continue to do that. That's why he was overwhelmingly elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, today's a great day for the rule of law. It's a great day for the Justice Department, and it's one that's been a long time coming, and one that every American should have been waiting for with bated breath. And so I echo what the President said and Attorney General Bondi, that the Supreme Court did a great thing today, not only for this administration, but for every American in this country. If not for the injunctions case, we would be here talking about another great decision that came down today, the trans books case, which restores parents' rights to decide their child's education. Seems like a basic idea, but it took the Supreme Court to set the record straight, and we thank them for that. And now that ruling allows parents to opt out of dangerous trans ideology and make the decisions for their children that they believe is correct. And so we thank the Supreme Court for that. There's been multiple decisions over the past several weeks that just show why this nationwide injunction ban had to happen. For example, what I mean by that is local district court judges issuing decisions that are clearly contrary to law just because they don't like the policy of President Trump. And when it gets to the Supreme Court has to correct it. But that takes time. The Attorney General thanked our lawyers, and I'll do it again. Our lawyers are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to fight these injunctions and to emergency appeals, emergency stays, going back to the district court judge, asking them to change their view. And so their hard work is really paying off today, but over the past few weeks. We had a stay of an order that prevented DHS from moving aliens to a third country. We had a stay of an order that stopped the Department of Defense from implementing military readiness, the EO that President Trump signed. We had another stay of an order forcing reinstatement of fired executive branch employees entirely within the President and Article 2, his right to do. We had a stay of, as you all know, of numerous DOJ cases. And again, every one of those stays requires a tremendous amount of work and effort by the lawyers and parties involved, and they should be doing other work. They should be doing the work that the President and this administration demands and has a right to demand, and not fighting these local judges who don't make decisions based on the law. They make decisions because they just simply don't agree with the administration's decision about a policy, and that's wrong. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, for Pam, please.
Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Attorney General. So, as you know, the Supreme Court did not rule on the underlying constitutionality of the President's birthright citizenship order. So, what is the plan now? Are you going to try to implement the EO just in states where there isn't a legal challenge?
Yes, so birthright citizenship will be decided in October in the next session by the Supreme Court, unless it comes down in the next few minutes. I guess it could come down. I think they're still deliberating right now on some cases. As you heard, we just got transgender books, which is a huge win. But most likely, that will be decided in October in the next session. However, it indirectly impacts us because, as you correctly pointed out, if there's a birthright citizenship case in Oregon, it will only affect the plaintiff in Oregon, not the entire country. So yes, it's indirectly, but that's pending litigation, and we're waiting on that in the next term.
And how concerned are you that the Supreme Court will come back and determine that the executive order is unconstitutional?
Oh, we're very confident in the Supreme Court. But again, it's pending litigation, and that will directly be determined in October, but it indirectly impacts every case in this country, and we're thrilled with their decision today. Peter.
Madam Attorney General, thank you for being here to take our questions. A couple questions to the both of you. The EO had a 30-day grace period before it goes into effect. Is there any thought about trying to make it effective immediately within that period of time?
We're going to follow the law. We're going to make those decisions, and we're going to do what's right in the bounds of the law.
And then the DOJ didn't ask the justices to rule on the merits of the birthright citizenship ban. Just for explanation purposes, why?
Sure, because that's going to come down in October in the separate. This was huge because it's indirectly impacted today. As I said, it's case by case. Let me reiterate, of the 35 of the 40 nationwide injunctions filed against this president, against his executive authority as President of the United States, 35 of them came from Maryland, D.C., Massachusetts, California, Washington. I mean, that's crazy. These 5 districts, so yes, it indirectly impacts us. It will be a separate decision in October. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question for you, sir. Do you believe this ends the power of the lower court judges to stop your agenda? Do you see this as a full green light for your agenda going forward?
Well, you'd have to really speak to the lawyers about that, but this is really also a decision based on common sense. It didn't work the other way. It was a disaster where somebody from a certain location in a very liberal state or a liberal judge or a liberal group of judges could tie up a whole country for years because their decision would sometimes take years to overturn. We've overturned many of the decisions, but it would take years to do it. And we have to act quickly. When it comes to illegal immigration, we have murderers, killers, we have drug dealers, we have what they've allowed to come into our country should never be forgotten. It should never be forgotten what they've done to our country. And we have to be able to act very quickly, and we're going to do that. Thank you.
Just as Amy Coney Barrett, sir, I know that you praised her and her opinion here in this case. She has taken some heat, though, from some of your supporters who have labeled her weak, a squishy, a rattled law professor. What is your take on that?
I don't know about that. I just have great respect for her. I always have. And her decision was brilliantly written today. From all accounts, yeah.
Transgender rulings, Mr. President. What would you say to Americans who fear that this is more and more concentration of power in the White House and the executive?
Well, this really brings back the Constitution. This is what it's all about, and this is really the opposite of that. I mean, the question is fine, but it's the opposite. The Constitution has been brought back.
Thank you so much, President Trump. Illegal crossings in the border are 0 now.
0. Does everyone hear that? 0.
Trump
2028.
Do you intend, President Trump?
Who's that guy? I like him. He's working the cameras.
With this new reality, President Trump, in the border, do you intend to engage personally with leaders from South America, not only Central America, in order to tackle this situation in a reasonable way, and if you have a perspective of meeting some presidents from South America, as Brazil, for example?
Well, you should, as an example, not South America, but NATO over the weekend. They have great respect for our country now. They did things that nobody thought was possible. They took funding from 2% to 5%. Nobody thought they'd ever pay the 2%, and now they're paying the 5%. It's over $1 trillion more a year. Think of that, $1 trillion. Nobody thought that could happen. That's a different group of people, different countries. But we get along with a lot of countries. We are respected again. Our country, the U.S., is respected again. Was not respected 6 months ago. I can tell you.
We ask about the big beautiful bill, sir?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. President, you have a deadline coming up on trade in 2 weeks. Which countries, if any, on trade, on tariffs, sir? Which countries, if any, are close to agreements with the administration?
Well, that's an interesting question. We've made a deal with China. We've made a deal with probably 4 or 5 different countries. With the UK, it was a great deal for both. And we're in the process of making some others. But ultimately, in fact, Scott is here. And Howard Lutnick, these 2 guys have been doing an incredible job. And the people that work with them have been doing an incredible job. But, you know, we have 200 countries. You could say 200 countries plus. We can't do that. So at a certain point over the next week and a half or so, or maybe before, we're going to send out a letter. We talked to many of the countries, and we're just going to tell them what they have to pay to do business in the United States. And it's going to go very quickly. But some of the bigger countries, so India, I think we're going to reach a deal where we have the right to go in and trade. Right now it's restricted. You can't walk in there. You can't even think about it. We're looking to get a full trade barrier dropping, which is unthinkable. And I'm not sure that that's going to happen, but as of this moment, we've agreed to that, go into Indian trade. We're going to be trading in China. That's going to come a little bit down the road, but we're going to be trading in China. We have a lot of great things going, and we're getting along with countries, but some will be disappointed because they're going to have to pay tariffs. And we've taken in already hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. No inflation. The only problem we have is we have a Fed guy that doesn't understand what's happening, and it would be great if he'd lower the rate because we'd be able to borrow a lot cheaper. Yeah, go ahead, please.
A question.
Why don't we keep it on this subject? This is such a big subject. You know what? Trade is so big, but this, I don't know, in a certain way, this might be bigger than trade.
A
I think this is bigger than trade. Yes, please, go ahead.
I was wondering, though, if you could...
Go ahead.
Sir, on the transgender ruling, the Supreme Court ruling that parents with religious objections can pull their kids out of public school lessons that use LGBTQ materials. Pam brought it up. Your reaction to that ruling today, sir?
I think the ruling was a great ruling, and I think it's a great ruling for parents. It's really a ruling for parents. They lost control of the schools. They lost control of their child. And this is a tremendous victory for parents. And I'm not surprised by it, but I am surprised that it went this far. It took us to bring life back to normal. So it's wonderful. It's parental. And I kept saying, we will give you back your parental rights. They were taken away, and this is a tremendous victory for parents. Yeah.
Mr. President, if you look at the back at the last week, it's been extraordinary in terms of the action in the Middle East. You were at The Hague.
I'm wondering now, hell of a week, hasn't it?
I'm wondering now if you believe that Iran. I'm wondering now, sir, if you believe that Iran has given up its long history of ambitions with nuclear weapons, or what you would like to see from them to prove that they do, and what type of meetings is your administration looking for next week with Iran?
So Iran wants to meet. As you know, their sites were obliterated. They're very evil nuclear sites. They were, now has been proven. We had some fake news for a little while. The same people that covered the Hunter Biden laptop was from Russia. The same people that did 3 or 4 other Russia hoax.
But on their
no, wait, just listen. They came up with something that delayed the credit that our great pilots and these great what talent that was, and they hit it right down in the spot. 52,000 feet. Think of this dark, no moon, you couldn't see a thing, and they hit the refrigerator door, as they say. That's the size of a target, and overwhelmingly, and it's amazing what was done. We're the only ones that could have done it, and we took out the 2 of the other sites also. In addition to that, we finished them off. That was a very evil intention. I believe that, and again, time will tell, but I don't believe that they're going to go back into nuclear anytime soon. They spent over $1 trillion on nuclear, and they never got it together. And nothing was moved from the site, by the way. To do that is very dangerous. It's very, very heavy material. Those cars were most likely the cars of masons because they were pouring concrete at the top, at the hatch, as you know, the hatch going into the nuclear site. They wanted to reinforce it, and they had some masons there pouring concrete. By the way, that concrete was obliterated. It hit exactly at the concrete. It was, I don't think it had a chance to dry. But everything's down there. It's under millions of tons of rock. Please. Yes.
Your administration has said that El Salvador is one of the safest countries in the hemisphere. So why haven't you yet canceled temporary protective status for that country? Was it part of the deal?
Well, we'll take a look. We've had a great relationship with El Salvador. They have a fantastic leader. They built a massive prison system. And I don't know exactly why, but it's a hell of a system. And we bring people there, and when they go there, they don't get out. And frankly, when they hear they have to go there, they become very nice people. They become very nice people. It's a tough system, but it's a brilliant system. And it's a system done by a very, very good leader. We'll talk about El Salvador. A lot of respect. Yeah, please.
Thank you. A question for you and then a question for the Attorney General. As you go into negotiations and talks with Iran, are you demanding not only that there would be no uranium production inside of Iran, but also that Iran would turn over all existing stockpiles of uranium?
Well, you know, we're a little early for that, but something like that, yeah, we'll do something like that. Let me say that I've been saying for 25 years, even as a civilian, you cannot let them have a nuclear weapon, and that's what happened. It's been obliterated. It would be years before they could ever get going, and I really think it's probably the last thing. They have to recover from a hell of a tough war.
Would you also be demanding that the IAEA have full rights to inspect in Iran?
Or somebody, yeah, or somebody that we respect, and then including ourselves.
And a question for both the President and the Attorney General. Under birthright citizenship, if this is implemented, who would be tasked with actually vetting citizenship? And how, like, would this be a situation where you have nurses and doctors checking for citizenship of parents, or?
This is all pending litigation. It's going to be decided in October by the Supreme Court, and we'll discuss that after the litigation.
If you have an undocumented baby, would that baby then be an enforcement priority?
The violent criminals in our country are the priority now. Let me put it in perspective. Today marked the 2,711th arrest in our country of TDA members, just TDA. Everyone in this room agrees they are one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. And the Biden administration let them walk into our country for the last 4 years. 2,711 of them today have been arrested in our country. That is the priority of Donald Trump. That is the priority of this country, of Homeland Security, of all of our lawyers, of FBI. That's the priority. That will be discussed in October when the Supreme Court hopefully rules in our favor, and we're very confident of that. But you should all feel safer now that President Trump can deport all of these gangs, and not one district court judge can think they're an emperor over this administration and his executive powers, and why the people of the United States elected him.
I just might add one thing, and they used birthright citizenship, some of the worst people, some of the cartels, to get people into our country, just so you know. And again, I say, if you look at the end of the Civil War, the 1800s, it was a very turbulent time. If you take the end day, was it 1869 or whatever, but you take that exact day, that's when the case was filed. And the case ended shortly thereafter. This had to do with the babies of slaves, very, very obviously. And I think we're going to win. People I don't think they went about discussing it right. I came along and we looked and we said, wait a minute, this is wrong. We've been looking at birthright citizenship wrong for years, but they've used it. The cartels have used birthright citizenship to get very bad people in, and what Pam's doing and what Todd and everybody else, what they're doing at DOJ and all over, FBI, ICE, Border Patrol, these are incredible people. They're trying to keep our country safe, and they don't want to have people come in. This is just another way that they get illegal immigrants into our country, and in some cases, very, very bad ones. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your tax bill, if I could for a moment, senators are racing to rewrite parts of it right now after the Senate parliamentarian ruled that sections of it were outside of the process that they're using to get this through. Do you think that senators should respect the decisions of the parliamentarian? And what have you personally done in the last 48 hours to try and get Republican senators who are against the bill to a yes?
Well, look, it's a great bill. It's a massive tax cut. If it's not approved, your taxes will go up by 68%. Think of that, 68, a record, the highest in the history. The Democrats won't approve it only because politically it's so good for the Republicans. The Democrats aren't approving it. But think of what they're not approving. They're not approving border security. We've done a great job at the border, but we have to add some wall. We have to do various things. We have no money for that. We have no money for the border. We have no money for so many things. But if the Democrats, it'd be interesting to see if we get any Democrat votes. We should. If I were a Democrat, I would absolutely, maybe Fetterman, because he seems to be the most sensible one lately. If I were a Democrat, I would vote for this bill all day long because it's tax cuts and so many other things that are common sense. They're basic things. I think they're doing fine. The parliamentarian's been a little difficult. And I would say that I disagree with the parliamentarian on some things, and on other ways he's been fine. But we'll have to see. It's a big issue. I will tell you this: if that bill doesn't pass, the country will get a 68% tax increase. So think of this: you're a Democrat and you vote against it. That means you're voting in favor, because essentially you're voting in favor of the largest tax hike in the history of our country. And you can't do that. In addition, we're cutting costs by $1.7 trillion, and it won't affect anybody. It's just fraud, waste, and abuse.
Mr. President, a leading global economist just did a 180 and says your tariff plan, you may have outsmarted everybody with it. What is your message?
I love this. I love this question. This is the favorite. This is the best question I've ever been asked, because I've been going through abuse for years on this. Because, as you know, we're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, no inflation whatsoever.
But, Mr. President, what is your message to critics who think your tariff plan will cause a recession?
I think they should go back to business school. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. I mean, we're taking in billions and billions of dollars from China and a lot of other countries. We took in, I had a call from somebody in the House and a high official, sir, we have a problem. We don't know what to do. The books are a mess. I said, what do I mean by the books? The books, the money coming in. It's so terrible. I figured, oh boy, what's this? I don't like this question. I said, so what seems, there's so much money coming in, and there must be some kind of an accounting mistake because we have hundreds of billions of dollars more money than we thought. I said, do me a favor, go check call me back. You have to call me back. Check the tariff column. Calls me back 2 hours later, says, you're right. We took in $88 billion in tariffs. They have so much money coming in. But more important than the money coming in, we have companies coming in, factories coming in, auto plants being built. AI is being built here instead of being built all over Europe and Asia. We have all of it. We have over $15 trillion, just about, Scott. I think we're right about that number. We went to Saudi Arabia. We went to Qatar. We went to UAE. Very smart people, very smart leaders, great leaders. And we took in $5.1 trillion just there. Without the tariffs, I mean, they also liked a thing called November 5th, November 6th, and November 7th. That was a very good little period of time. It's called the presidential election. You know, you used to have one-day election. Now you have it go over it. But even if you just took that little period, because it was pretty obvious it was going to be a landslide. And they like that, but they love the tariffs. I had Texas Instruments come in the other day, big company, and he said, we're putting in $60 billion into new plants and new equipment, new everything. Sir, you're going to keep the tariffs, aren't you? Because if I ever took the tariffs off, and we are going to absolutely keep it. And they're worried that somebody that, like this communist from New York, someday gets elected. I can't believe that's happening. That's a terrible thing for our country, by the way. He's a communist. We're going to go to a communistic state. That's so bad for New York. But the rest of the country is revolting against it. But if somebody got elected, they're afraid that if this was taken off, well, we're going to guarantee it's never going to be taken off. And again, we're taking in think of this, hundreds of billions of dollars. And they were all confused because they've never seen this before. You know, it's always the other way. We don't have enough money. So much money is coming in at levels that nobody's ever seen. But most importantly, we have factories being built, car plants being built, companies moving to our country like never before. If you look at 15 trillion, and that's only in a few months. You know, I haven't been here that long. Presidents, like the last one, was a disaster. He's the worst president in the history of our country, by the way. What he did on our border can never, ever be forgotten. To me, that's the worst of all the things. And he's done some terrible things, grossly incompetent. Nobody knew it was him because I don't think it was him. I think it was whoever was controlling the auto pen. But our country is doing great. And those leaders and other leaders I just left, as you know, a large group of the most highly respected people. And that includes big countries. When you look at Germany and France and Spain, although Spain didn't come through, but they will. By the way, guaranteed they will. That was the only country that sort of tried to hold back on putting up the money. But just so you know, they said, it's unbelievable what's happened to the USA. You were a dead country. We didn't respect the country, the leader. You were dead as a doornail. One said to me, you went from being a dead country. You are right now the hottest country anywhere in the world. The whole world is talking about the USA, and everybody wants a part of it, and they're pouring into our country, and you're going to see those numbers. Thank you for that question. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question about trade. Secretary Bessent has said that he hopes tariff deals with major partners will be done by Labor Day. So if some deals are not done by your July 9th deadline, will some countries' tariffs go back up, or will they stay where they are now?
Well, there are some countries that are used to ripping us off, to be honest with you. And I don't want to name them, but you sort of can name them. And they're so used to just, taking it billions and billions of, look, we had a trade deficit of more than $1 trillion. Think of a trade deficit. That's because nobody cared. We cared a lot when, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariff. We had the greatest economy in history up until now. I think we're going to blow it away. But during my time, and especially prior to COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think we're going to blow it away now based on the kind of numbers that we're seeing. But some countries are very angry because they've been ripping us off for years. They've been making billions and billions of dollars. There was nobody to negotiate with. They could do whatever they want. They charge us tariffs, by the way, at numbers that we've never seen before. and we ended up losing much more than $1 trillion a year. $1 trillion a year on trade. And now they're being met with a force that's far greater than them, and they don't like it. So they're upset because instead of making, you know, $5 billion, they're going to break even, or they'll make a little bit. I want to be nice. They'll make a little bit, or we'll make a little bit. It's a big difference. Yeah, please go. Go ahead. Red dress.
On the 2020 election, is there any more information on the special prosecutor? So many Americans still have questions about the 2020 election. And speaking of rogue judges, would you consider appointing somebody at DOJ maybe to investigate the judges that allowed for the political persecution of you, your family, and your supporters during the Biden administration?
I love you. Who are you?
I'm Kara from Lindell TV.
Well, it's just a very nice question. And it's not a setup. I have no idea who you are, but I appreciate that question. All I can say is we're not here for that. I hope so. I hope they're doing a thing because that election was rigged and stolen, and we can't allow that to happen. You know, a lot of people tell me, sir, you just won the greatest election in the history of our country. You won at numbers that won all 7 swing states, won the popular vote, won everything. Sir, go on with your life. And many people that say that, good people, friends of mine, then you have people that say that same thing, go on with your life, but you have to find out what happened because you can't let that happen again. Look at what this lunatic did. Look at what he did. He opened our borders to people that were murderers, 11,888 to be exact, murderers. And we've captured many of those murderers, and we're bringing them back, or some of them are so dangerous that we don't even want to bring them back. We're afraid they're going to try and come back in. But he allowed people to come into this country, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, that's a mental institution on steroids, people from mental institutions, gang members, drug dealers, people, jails, being emptied out into our country. Venezuela emptied out almost its entire prison population into our country. But I don't want to blame them. Many countries have done that. The Congo, you know, we have a great press conference coming up later, and it's the Congo and Rwanda. You know, they were fighting for years, and it was machetes, it was vicious, it was as vicious, people's heads being chopped off. And I have a man who's very good in that part of the world, very smart, and put them together. And we're signing a peace treaty today. First time in many years they're going to have peace. And it's a big deal. You know, we talk about Russia, and we're working that one. President Putin called up and he said, I'd love to help you with Iran. I said, do me a favor. I'll handle Iran. Help me with Russia. We got to get that one settled. And I think something's going to happen there. But we did some great work. India and Pakistan. That was going to be maybe nuclear. We did that. We did a lot of work. I don't know if there's ever been a president that's done much more. Serbia, Kosovo was going to go at it. Going to be a big war. I said, you go at it. There's no trade with the United States. They said, well, maybe we won't go at it. That's what happened with India and Pakistan. I was negotiating with both of them, and I said to Scott, I said to Howard, cancel all deals with India and Pakistan. They're not trading with us because they're in a war. They called back, what do we do? I said, look, you want to have trade with the United States, it's great. But you want to go and start using nuclear weapons on each other? We're not going to allow that. And they both agreed. Both have great leaders. They both agreed not to do it. So we did a lot, but I appreciate that question.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
Orange.
President. Thank you, Mr. President. I was just speaking with Senator Ron Johnson on the One Big Beautiful Bill, and he says he really wants to get to yes for you and get this accomplished.
He does. He's a good man.
But he also said that he needs more time, and he is not certain that the July 4th deadline is possible.
Well, then he's not such a good man.
Because there's too much work to do.
He's a good man. Ron Johnson's doing a good job. He's very committed. Every Republican senator is committed. And, you know, you could have a couple of grandstanders, in all fairness. You could have somebody else. And it's very dangerous because our country would go from being the most successful country in the world to who knows what happens with a 68%, think of it, 68% tax increase. That was given by the Democrats because they like high taxes. I don't know what happened. You know, all my life, I'd grow up and I'd watch politicians talking. I'd say, oh, that's fun. And they were always saying, we will cut your taxes. We will cut your tax. I never heard it. They say, we will raise your taxes. and they elect people like this guy in New York that maybe has a chance. I find it hard to believe, but he maybe has a chance. They want to raise your taxes, so they want to see a 68% tax increase. That's more money than anybody could afford. You'd go into a depression if that ever happened. So I think there's a lot of pressure to get that approved.
How important is the July 4th deadline to you?
It's important. It's not the end all. It can go longer, but we'd like to get it done by that time, if possible. And look, we have a lot of very committed people, and they feel very strongly about a subjects that you're not even thinking about that are important to Republicans. The problem we have is that it's a great bill. It's a popular bill, but we'll get no Democrats only because they don't want to vote for Trump. If that bill was their bill, oh, they would be so happy. It's so great for our military. It's great for everything. And they would normally vote, but because their hatred of Trump, they have Trump derangement syndrome at levels never seen before. And instead of voting for a tax cut, they're voting for a tax increase of 68%. They're voting to destroy Social Security, destroy Medicare, and destroy Medicaid. And we're voting to make them perfect and to make them better, make them stronger and better. They're going to destroy Medicaid, and they're going to destroy Medicare, and Social Security will follow. If you vote for the Democrats, you're dead on those three things.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a related subject, many Democrats have said that they are not going to support crypto bills in Congress only because of you and your family's personal crypto ventures. And these votes are in some cases needed to pass. Are you open to the idea of pulling away from your personal crypto ventures just for the next few years if that helps get these crypto bills passed in the next few months?
Well, it's a very funny thing, crypto. So I became a fan of crypto, and to me it's an industry. I view it as an industry, and I'm president. And if we didn't have it, China would, or somebody else would, but most likely China. China would love to. And we've dominated that industry. It's a big industry, by the way. In fact, when the stock market went down recently, crypto and Bitcoin and all of that went down much less than anybody else as a group. And we've created a very powerful industry, and that's much more important than anything that we invest in. We invest in it, but really that was an industry that wasn't doing particularly well. I got involved with it a couple of years ago, and before the second term. I got involved before I decided to run. I only decided to run because I saw what was happening, and Biden was incompetent, and the administration was crooked and incompetent. And I was in Bitcoin then, not knowing if I was going to do it a third time. So it's become amazing. I mean, it's the jobs that it produces. And I notice more and more you pay in Bitcoin. I mean, people are saying it takes a lot of pressure off the dollar. And it's a great thing for our country. So I don't care about investing. You know, I have I have kids, and they invest in different things. They do believe in it. But I'm president, and what I did do there is build an industry that's very important. And, you know, if we didn't have it, China would. Okay.
Sir, Mr. President.
Go ahead. With the glasses. Gentlemen, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, are you going to cut funds in the sanctuary states, like, for instance, California, that keep supporting illegal immigration, and then these people work under
Yeah, we're
the
giving
table?
them a hard time.
And also, in a foreign policy question.
I mean, they don't have a governor in California. They have a man that wants to give away everything to people that nobody's seen before. If we didn't go into Los Angeles with the military, which did a fantastic job, but if we didn't go into Los Angeles bringing in the National Guard, I would have brought the military if it was necessary, because you have to. We have the right to. That was another thing upheld by the Supreme Court. But if we didn't go in with the National Guard and be strong and tough, you wouldn't maybe have Los Angeles. It would be like the rest of California, the rest of Los Angeles. They lost 25,000 houses in a fire. They should have lost none. You know, I sent the water down. I had to break into their water supply because they just refused to do it. They're crazy. There's something wrong with them. They have plenty of water. They don't have droughts or anything. They have plenty. We let it come down from the Pacific Northwest. They routed all the water out into the Pacific Ocean for environmental reasons, okay? And now you have 25,000 houses, none of which would have burned down if you had the water. They didn't have water. They didn't have water for the fire pumps. They didn't have water in the sprinkler systems that people put in. So the answer is we're going to work with governors. We're going to work with radical left Democrats and Democrats, and we're going to make it good for everybody. We'll have to stop the crime in those. In the case of the cities, I think I can say just about all cities with heavy crime are run by Democrats. Go ahead.
11 lies.
Yeah, with the glasses.
I'm with you.
Go ahead, yes. Yeah, go, no, the man behind you, yeah, please.
President Trump, Anthony Mashak from Anthony, Lebanon. I want to ask you regarding the threats posed by Iran's allies and proxies operating in the U.S. They were threatening your life. So what do you say about that? And regarding the Lebanon, because Hezbollah is as well part of Iran's allies, is there any time frame in Lebanon regarding disarming Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Yeah, Lebanon is a great place with brilliant people. You know, it was known for the professors and doctors and had an incredible history. And hopefully we can bring it back again. I just appointed a friend of mine who's Lebanese, and I didn't know he was Lebanese. I've known him for 20 years, very, very successful man. And I just appointed him. And I said, why would you want that? He said, because I was born there, I was raised there, I love it. I love it so much. I said, you know, it's very dangerous going to Lebanon as ambassador. And he said, that's what they say, but I don't care about danger. I mean, this is a guy that is just a very big business guy. He wants to give up his whole life to go to Lebanon because he believes in it so much. We're with Lebanon all the way. We'll try and straighten it out.
Your life as well. So what action?
Threaten my life? Yeah, they have threatened. I get that throbbing feeling every once in a while. Get that throbbing feeling, but you know what? That's okay. This is a dangerous business. What I do is a dangerous business. You know, I tell the story of the car companies and different people in different professions you have. Race car drivers, as an example. 1/10 of 1% die. Bull riders, 1/10 of 1%. That's not a lot, but it's people die. When you're president, it's about 5%. If somebody would have told me that, maybe I wouldn't have run. Okay? This is a very dangerous profession. Yeah, by the way, so many questions. Should we keep this going, Pam? This is the opposite of Biden. Biden would take a half a question and he'd leave without answering it. Go ahead.
On Iran.
You tell me when it gets boring. Okay.
If Iran.
Are you from Iran?
No, I'm not from Iran. I'm from the UK. But if the intelligence reports conclude that Iran can enrich uranium to a level that concerns you, would you consider bombing the country again?
Without question, absolutely.
And have you had any conversations?
Turned out to be unbelievable. But, you know, our incredible flyers and I call them the shots, these guys are unbelievable. Think, from 52,000 feet, they hit the equivalent of a refrigerator door. They actually hit it right in the center, so it's much smaller than that. And just bomb after bomb going deeper, deeper, blowing up. Incredible, incredible thing. I don't know if you heard the general. He was very impressive. Raisin Cain. You know, he's the one that beat ISIS for me. And he did it in a matter of weeks. And I was told it was going to take 4 or 5 years. And when I got this job, I always said, if I get this job, I'm going to put that guy as the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Dan Cain, and he, when I heard his name was Raisin, his nickname is Raisin Cain. I said, you got to be kidding. So I liked him right from the beginning. But he knocked out ISIS in a time that nobody ever thought possible. And when this attack was completed and so successful, I said, now I know how you knocked out ISIS so quickly. But we have the best people, we have the best equipment in the world. You know, I rebuilt the military during my 4 years, during my other term. We have the best equipment in the world. The problem is we gave away, you know, a lot of it, but small, relatively speaking. We gave a lot of it away to Afghanistan. Shouldn't have happened. That just shows how incompetent they were. They gave all that equipment away, billions and billions of dollars worth. Shouldn't have happened, but that was small compared to what we have. Now we have a great military with great people. Okay. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, congratulations. A couple of very different questions. One is Rwanda, 1994. As you grew up in New York, we all knew how horrific those attacks were. Congratulations on that treaty. There are talks that perhaps...
That's going to take place today at 3 o'clock in the Oval Office. We're going to have a signing with Rwanda and the Congo.
I have a follow-up.
So I'm a little out of my league in that one because I didn't know too much about it. I knew one thing. They were going at it for many years and with machetes. It is one of the worst wars that anyone's ever seen. And I just happened to have somebody that was able to get it settled. I mean, just a brilliant person who is very comfortable in that part of the world. It's a very dangerous part of the world. I said, are you uncomfortable there? People are being killed. School children are being raided and killed. And I don't even want to say how, but as viciously as I've ever heard. Are you uncomfortable? No, that's the part of the world that I know. Very comfortable. Was able to get them together and sell it. And not only that, we're getting for the United States a lot of the mineral rights from the Congo as part of it. They're so honored to be here. They never thought they'd be coming to, look, this is a very tough part of the world. They never thought, they were just telling me, they never thought they'd ever be coming to the White House, and they're so honored. And so we're going to give them a great big reception, but that's after many years of fighting. It's a great thing. That's at 3 o'clock, I believe.
Sir, are you concerned at all about secret nuclear sites in Iran? You talked about maybe just
secret nuclear site?
Yes, that there might be some of those.
Not really. Can I tell you? They're exhausted. And Israel's exhausted too. And I dealt with both of them. And they both wanted it settled, both of them. And we did a great job, but they're exhausted. The last thing they're thinking about right now is nuclear. You know what they're thinking of? They're thinking about tomorrow, trying to live. It's such a mess. It's such a mess. The place was bombed to hell. And no, I'm not worried about it at all. And I'm putting out a little statement. I'm going to respond to the Ayatollah's statement yesterday that we won the war. Oh, God, we won the war. And I said, look, you're a man of great faith, a man who's highly respected in this country. You have to tell the truth. You got beat to hell. And Israel was beat up too. They were both beat up. And it was a great time to end it. It was quick. They got the hate out. There was a lot of hate, a lot of hate. It would be great if they didn't have that hate. But the last thing they're thinking about is nuclear weapons right now. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Iris Howe with NTD Research Media with the Epoch Times. Thank you so much for doing this. It's very refreshing for all of us here.
It's a good group.
In this room.
It's refreshing.
Very refreshing. Yes, we haven't had this in, for the past.
I understand what you mean.
So thank you so much for coming out here.
Other than Caroline's done a great job.
Yes, sure.
You're referring to the past administration, not to Caroline, right?
Yes. Back to the ruling today, if you don't mind. So you have always talked about winning for the American people.
Right.
How do you think today's ruling will enable you to further deliver for American families and workers across the country, not only when it comes to immigration, but also when it comes to trade, energy? What actions are you most eager to move forward
Well, I think
now?
taking power away from these absolutely crazy radical left judges is a tremendous, this is such a big day. This is such a big day. It's like, it's sort of sad because we're doing the signing at 3 o'clock, and this may very well dominate the signing of a big war that was going on and really affecting the continent of, think of it, the entire continent of Africa was being affected. And we're settling that war today, and this will probably be a headline. But this is a very big moment, and it gives power back to people that should have it, including Congress, including the presidency. And it only takes bad power away from judges. It really doesn't take power. It takes bad power, sick power, and unfair power. And it's really going to be, this is a very monumental decision. Yeah, please.
Yes, President, thank you very much. On July 9th, is that July 9th date set for tariffs to snap back, or could there be a...
We can do whatever we want. We could extend it. We could make it shorter. I'd like to make it shorter. I'd like to just send letters out to everybody. Congratulations, you're paying 25%. He doesn't want, he's a much nicer person than I am. So do you finish it up?
Who are you considering for the Federal Reserve then? And are you speeding up that process? I see Secretary...
Oh, he's terrible. He's terrible. I mean, I have a list of things. We're like 38 on the list. We pay, Cameroon and different places are paying the same as us. Because, you have somebody sets a rate at 4% or 4.5%. It's hard to go out and say we should be paying 1% when you have your so-called experts doing that. And the sad part is, as per the question that you asked about tariffs, we've had the tariffs and we have less inflation than we had before. What we have is a hell of a lot more money, a hell of a lot more income, and we shouldn't be paying a rate like that. In other words, when we pay a rate, I'll tell you, each point is the equivalent of $300 billion. So if we had it down 3 points, because I think we should be at 1, you have Switzerland is at 0.25. In other words, 25% of 1%. And they're the number 1 right now. But we should be the number 1. And soon you're going to have, I think, you're going to have where the people will pay will pay, like we had a few years ago, where you put up money, you loan money, and I mean, you actually, instead of paying, you get paid. I love that. I don't know if it's any good, but I love it, where you put up money and you get paid. But we should be in a category, so we should be at the top of the list, not toward the bottom of the list. But we have a man who's not a smart man, and he probably has Trump derangement syndrome. And he's just not a smart person. What he's doing, though, he's hurting us for years to come. Because if we borrow money at 2 points higher than we should be paying, that's $600 billion. Wouldn't you say those numbers are about right, Scott? So it's 2 points would be about 600, actually more than that, but about $600 billion, all because the guy doesn't want to lower the rates. He's doing the service, a very disservice, and then he goes up and talks about, I'd like to see costs come down. You know, he gets up and he does his little thing for 5 minutes, and he goes out and he goes back to the beach. He goes, I'd like to see costs come down. Well, he could lower the interest cost by $900 billion a year. All he has to do is lower rates. And everybody's saying, I was watching some of the business shows today, and they're saying, you know, Trump's right. He should really be cutting. The country's doing well. We have no inflation. Now, despite him, we're doing great. But if we got the rates down, we would be a rocket ship. So I think that'll be it. And I just want to thank everybody. This is a really big day. We've had a big week. You know, we've had a big week. We've had a lot of victories this week. NATO was a tremendous victory. The war was a tremendous. Look, we were talking about this for 30 years, about Iran being nuclear. And all I said is it will not be nuclear, and it's not going to be nuclear. And you know, I want to give credit to a lot of people, and most importantly to our great military. Boy, they put out that fire. Once that happened, once those bombs got dropped, that war was over. That war was over. But I just want to compliment them. Incredible. The general and all of his generals. Pete Hegseth was great. They all. And now I want to compliment Pam. A lot of genius went into this. You know, people, if you don't say it exactly right, if the Supreme Court doesn't get it because it's incorrectly spoken about, and that happens. A lot of cases are lost because they don't say the right words. But I want to correct. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. I may change my mind about that. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll have to call and say I was only kidding. She's going to go down as a great attorney general. This was a tremendous win, and we've had tremendous wins, but this was a tremendous win today. So I just want to congratulate you and Todd and your whole staff. Very brilliant people, and we can't forget John Sauer.
That's right.
Who is with. There's a medical emergency within his family, so he's taking care of that, and we said absolutely. So I just want to thank everybody very much. Thank you.
Jeff Bezos on his wedding weekend.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome back to the show. That was US President Donald Trump, and also there Pam Bondi. She's the US Attorney General. As you'd imagine with Donald Trump, a 50-minute press conference, very expansive in its content. It touched on the top-line news. The reason for this press conference was what Donald Trump called a huge win, a big win, and that is the pathway to end the birthright citizenship law. It was basically a supreme order that Donald Trump signed on day one, where he wanted to end the right of people who came into the country illegally. If they had children, their children would no longer be automatically granted US citizenship, which of course will allow them to stay in the country, and their parents, even if they came in illegally. I'm joined in the studio by Catherine Forster. Catherine Forster, there's a huge amount of detail to pick through here. Let's try and help our viewers and listeners understand the huge significance of this moment. So this legislation was brought in the 1860s to recognise slaves who were enslaved in America, who had children. It gave them rights because they'd been seized and were in America. It gave their children the right to remain in the United States. But Donald Trump's point is that fast forward all the years forward, and it was being abused by people who came into America illegally. He said today, including cartels and criminals and drug barons having children so they could game the system. This had been blocked by a lot of injunctions, and today's ruling was that those injunctions have been blasted out of the way, clearing the pathway for this now to become law.
Yes, it was added to the US Constitution back in 1868.
Yeah.
But this Supreme Court victory, which was a 6-3 ruling, bear in mind the Supreme Court's got a Conservative majority. Trump appointed 3 of the judges, which of course is going to help. This lays the way open to him ending that automatic birthright citizenship, which he says has been widely abused. And what it means is, well, it's a very, very big deal. You can see how delighted he is because this was something he had pledged to do. He had said that these judges that had, launched injunctions on it were a grave threat to democracy. Now, it doesn't mean that what they're trying to do is necessarily legal. There wasn't a ruling on that. That will come in October, but it does pave the way for them being able to stop this and ending that abuse.
OK, let's get to our next guest now for some more reaction. I'm joined by Professor in International Politics at Birmingham University, Professor David Dunn. Welcome to the show, Professor Dunn, and thank you for waiting patiently. Donald Trump, he keeps everybody waiting. What's your take on this? This was a day one piece of an executive order which straight away was attacked from liberal states, he claimed, by woke far-left judges to try and derail his rulings. And today, that was swept to one side, and Pam Bondi, the US Attorney General, said no longer can these judges rule over a president like an emperor. She called it a great day for US democracy.
So there's 2 parts to this. The specific point about the birthright citizenship is less important than the wider point. Most states don't have birthright citizenship, so America was out of line with that, and that's less of a big deal than the other point, which is that actually the Supreme Court has stopped lower courts putting injunctions on any of his legal challenges. And that is a big deal, and that's a big deal for American democracy, because America is a country with a constitution, and the constitution has a system of checks and balances and in shared power between the courts, the Congress and the presidency. And that shifts that power firmly in the direction of the presidency, and that is problematic when you have someone who actually is prepared to issue a whole variety of executive orders on a whole variety of areas, radically changing the established policies.
But Professor Dunn, let's be resolutely clear. Donald Trump himself said that the Trump presidency has faced more injunctions than any previous presidency in the entire 20th century. Politically motivated attacks to try and stop the president being the president, putting forward pledges and manifestos that he promised prior to his election as president, and simply politically motivated attacks trying to take down his legislation. Call it what you want. His opponents from states that are Democrat states, such as California, weaponizing the law to stop him. Today, that was blasted to one side. Surely you can agree this is the victory for US democracy.
No, not at all. No, and let me explain why, if I can get a word in. So the way America works is by law, passing law through Congress. That's how, like the UK Parliament, Keir Starmer can't get up and just issue proclamations and expect them to be law, OK? What happens is Congress, a president proposes law through Congress. What Donald Trump has done, by contrast, is rather than putting bills through Congress, he's only put one bill to promulgate, his big, beautiful bill, so-called. What he's done instead is issues proclamations like a king or an emperor, trying to actually say, OK, these are now the law. Well, actually, there is a whole body of law passed by Congress, and the courts have said President, you can't just say this is what's going to happen, even if it was part of your manifesto. You have to go through Congress. And instead of going through Congress, he's expecting these proclamations to be followed. And now what's happened is that the established law is being challenged by the Supreme Court, who have been appointed by him and said, no, what Donald says goes. So whatever he thinks of, whatever he signs with his Sharpie, seems to now have the force of law, rather than the process of Congress deliberating and deciding and passing law as the Constitution says.
Professor David Dunn, I can taste your delight. I can taste your exultation at the fact that Donald Trump has blasted aside these injunctions. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the show today. By the way, there's a heavy dollop of irony there. He was not remotely happy, but that's always been the case. Let's move on to a completely different topic. One I've been waiting for all day. I'm glad it's here. The film F1 is out, and it features, of course, Brad Pitt as Sonny Hayes, whose first stint of his racing career is cut short by an horrific crash. Now, this is based on the real collision suffered by Martin Donnelly, a rising star in Formula One, until his nearly fatal crash in the 1990 Spanish Grand Prix. And I'm astonished, I'm delighted to be joined by that legend now, Martin Donnelly. Martin, pleasure. Thank you for being kept waiting there by Donald Trump. But look, this has brought your crash to the big screens of work. How does it feel to be recognised and honoured in this manner?
It is a very surreal feeling. I mean, who would have thought 35 years ago that we'd be here talking about the accident and having somebody as Brad Pitt playing the part, you know. I wish I could have patented that some years back, because they're making the money. I'm just a pauper. But, you know, as I said, it's for a little boy from Belfast who came across in '84 to try and start creating motorsport. It's funny how things turn out, isn't it?
And there's pictures out of that crash on screen. Tell us your memories. Ayrton Senna, of course, was looking on. It absolutely horrified the world, and you walked away from that. Incredible.
Well, I think for Ayrton, myself and Ayrton were distant friends, because he came from Brazil to drive for Van Diemen in Norfolk. I came from Northern Ireland to Van Diemen, and we used to go out on about 81, middle of 82, play the remote control planes and just put some hours in, because you couldn't test every day.
And that's you on the floor there. You can see you're very badly injured.
A lot of guys here in blue overalls, they are doctors, paramedics. Yeah. But under the rules at the time, there was a guy called Professor Sim Watkins, worked at the London Whitechapel Hospital, and his authority that nobody could touch me. You'll see, sure, if you keep running the VT, they then putting their gloves up to feel there was a pulse. They weren't sure if I was alive or dead then. So Sid's over on his way around in this Trabant, very slow car, got to me, lifted my visor up, can say I was suffocating. My face had turned blue. So he got me settled, got me settled and organised, and then I went on to him, but Senna was stood behind his right shoulder watching everything that he was doing, and it made Senna realise just how vulnerable that the human body is, you know.
I feel like I need to touch you. Because like, whatever you've got in there, you've got some miracle genetics. Because like that was, you were on the floor broken in pieces, and you're here now to tell the tale. Not only that, but your life, your crash has been immortalised. You've got a quick 5 seconds. How does it feel?
Feels very special, and I'm privileged being alive, being here today.
It's such an honour to have you. I wish we had longer to speak, but of course Donald Trump waits for no man. Martin Donnelly, absolute legend. Thank you very much. Jeeves and Carver is up next with Miriam Cates. Miriam, what's on your menu?
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update here on GB News. From the Met Office, we're talking about the heat rising this weekend, but it won't be everywhere that sees it. Hottest conditions across central and eastern England, staying cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some rain here through the day today. It's been a pretty wet day across the Highlands. Further rain and drizzle to come through the evening and overnight. And many western hills and coasts will keep rain and drizzle on and off. Many low-level areas, though, will stay dry. And certainly a lot of dry weather across the east. A warm old night. tonight. Quite breezy out there, and that breeze staying fairly lively through the night. If anything, getting stronger tomorrow across northern Scotland. But it should be a brighter day here. Likely to start a bit dull and damp through the central belt and across Northern Ireland, but that rain edging away. So while blustery, the Highlands particularly having a much cheerier day tomorrow. Turning brighter too across the east coast of Scotland. There's the rain early doors affecting Edinburgh, perhaps Belfast too, but it will be scooting away to the south. A bit damp certainly across the Lake District, and rain and drizzle over the hills of Wales and perhaps the moors of the southwest of England. But a good chunk of England will be dry. It does start fairly cloudy, but I'm optimistic it will turn sunnier as the day goes on. The main exception to that will be this zone across the far north of England, where it stays dull. Certainly across a good part of Cumbria, it'll stay a bit wet. Some rain at times maybe for Anglesey, and around the coasts of the southwest it may stay a bit murky. But with some sunshine, look at those temperatures up to 30 degrees Celsius. Much more pleasant, much fresher conditions for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some good spells of sunshine here too. And again, on Sunday, most of Scotland set fair. There'll be some thickening cloud, bringing some drizzly conditions back to Northern Ireland, staying a bit damp across Cumbria as well. But otherwise, again, many places dry on Sunday, getting brighter through the day. And if anything, Sunday a little hotter over these eastern parts of England, 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Hotter still by the time we get to Monday. Goodbye.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The A40 is closed in both directions for resurfacing, directing traffic through halfway. Delays on Lancashire's M65 eastbound between junctions 8 and 10 are due to an overturned vehicle. Staffordshire's A50 eastbound has 20-minute delays between the A522 and Uttoxeter East. Congestion affects the M11 southbound exit slip at junction 7. In Kent, traffic congests the M25 anti-clockwise between junctions 3 and 2. And on the trains, major disruptions occur between London Euston and Milton Keynes Central. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
£54,321 in totally tax-free cash could make your year the best yet. How would you react if you got that winning call?
Oh my God, I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to